technology to complement it, along with sufficient survivability and offensive capability. Without these supporting elements, a warship that is too large becomes nothing more than a slow-moving, fragile target, which is of no use. The first Stardust-class warship successfully passed inspection and basically met the requirements. Following this, the mass production of Stardust-class warships was immediately put on the agenda. With resources from across the solar system supporting it, the shipyard in space quickly began full-scale production. Countless factories roared to life, producing the components needed for the Stardust-class warships. In the vacuum and zero-gravity assembly environment, tens of millions of robots worked tirelessly to assemble one Stardust-class ship after another. Once a new ship rolled off the assembly line, under the command of Chunyu, it would immediately fly to a location about 6 million kilometers from a certain planet, where it would join its comrades and engage in intense space warfare. Once the number of Stardust-class ships reached 100, Chunyu immediately began military exercises. No matter how effective simulated exercises are, they remain virtual. They can only change within the framework set by Chunyu. However, the real world is bound to be much more complex than the virtual one, and many issues can only be revealed in a real environment. These 100 ships were divided into 2 camps, engaging in fierce confrontations throughout the day, supported by a large supply ship. When the number of Stardust-class ships increased to 1,000, Chunyu opened a second battlefield, using a satellite as the core for a planet capture operation. One fleet desperately attacked the satellite, trying to destroy the industrial facilities on it. The fleet belonging to the satellite fought fiercely to defend it, protecting the industrial facilities that provided them with resource support. A large number of ground-based air defense weapons also began to play a role. Ground-based electromagnetic cannons, laser cannons, missile bases, and others directly participated in the battle, striving to inflict damage on the enemy and protect themselves. Planet capture battles, space encounters, space positional warfare, near-star environment operations, high-radiation environment operations, planetary surface operations, and ambush tactics. Chunyu devised dozens of different space combat environments, commanding the increasingly large fleet to engage in continuous battles in these environments. His theories of warfare rapidly developed under these circumstances. When the number of Stardust-class ships reached 20,000, the next generation of squadron flagship ships, the Nebula-class ships, which Chunyu had been diligently developing, finally rolled off the assembly line, with a production run of 100 ships. This brought new changes to the war situation. The tonnage of the Nebula-class ships reached 10,000 tons, making them larger, heavier, with stronger defenses and significantly greater offensive capabilities than the smallest Stardust-class ships. It is equipped with 150 interstellar missiles and as many as 30 electromagnetic cannons, with 2 main guns that fire projectiles with an energy of up to 1 billion joules, equivalent to the total energy released by 240 kilograms of explosives. When Chunyu attempted to organize a fleet of Stardust-class warships, grouping about 30 of them together with a Nebula-class warship as the core, and engaging in combat against opponents who maintained their previous combat mode without Nebula-class warships, the fleet equipped with Nebula-class ships immediately displayed overwhelming superiority. The firepower of the Nebula-class warships was incredibly powerful, and their defense was excessively strong. When the battle reached a stalemate, where neither side could gain the upper hand, the arrival of the Nebula-class warships could instantly break the deadlock, disrupting the enemy's line, allowing numerous Stardust-class warships to unleash their firepower and quickly overpower the enemy. When in a disadvantageous position, the Nebula-class warships also demonstrated significant effectiveness. They could serve as a pivot on the battlefield, allowing the Stardust-class warships to fight around them and gain protection, preventing a complete collapse. The battlefield situation was ever-changing. As long as one could hold on and not be defeated, there would always be a chance to turn the tables. The Nebula-class warships played a crucial role in preventing defeat, enabling their side to persist and avoid collapse. During a stalemate, their powerful firepower and defense could break the deadlock. Chunyu realized that the Nebula-class warships were incredibly useful. After practical testing confirmed the effectiveness of the Nebula-class warships and fleet tactics, Chunyu immediately set to work on developing a larger Comet-class warship. He clearly recognized that the Comet-class would be the largest, most powerful, longest range, and strongest defense warship he could create under current technological conditions. Accordingly, the Comet-class warship needed to have a strategic role capable of influencing and changing the entire battlefield situation to be considered qualified. The Stardust-class warships were meant for frontline combat. Strategically viewed as expendable, losing one or gaining one was not significant. The Nebula-class warships could influence the situation in a specific battlefield. Losing one wouldn't affect the overall situation, but it could lead to a complete loss of control over that particular battlefield. The Comet-class warship, however, was different. It served as the flagship of an entire fleet and had the capacity to influence the outcome of an entire war. Thus, if it were destroyed, it could potentially lead to the failure of the entire war. It was so important that Chun Yu spent a whole year designing it before finalizing the plans and officially starting the construction process. Throughout this process, he pursued perfection, disregarding costs entirely. Chapter 58. The Seventh Fleet. After a full 3 years, a time during which Chun Yu could have built dozens of large research centers, he finally completed the construction of the first Comet-class warship. Its mass has reached an unprecedented level of 100,000 tons. Equipped internally with 4 nuclear fusion power stations to provide energy, and driven by a total of 240 ion thrusters. In terms of armor, significant resources were invested. Various types of armor such as sloped armor and reactive armor were extensively utilized. The special alloy steel used to manufacture its armor is extremely high-tech, with complicated processes that make production very challenging. Even with the industrial strength available, the output is only about 100,000 tons per year. The armor for this class of vessel alone takes up a full 10,000 tons. The consumption of various precious materials has even caused some concern. Moreover, this first vessel of its class is unprecedentedly equipped with ultra-high precision radar scanning and laser defense systems. Other classes of vessels also have some capability for intercepting interstellar missiles. When they detect incoming missiles, they can use their onboard electromagnetic cannons, laser cannons, and dedicated intercepting missiles to counter. If interception is impossible, tactical maneuvers can be executed to evade, and decoys can be released to confuse the missiles. However, against the most common and numerous electromagnetic projectiles on the battlefield, they are helpless, relying solely on armor to withstand impacts or proactively evading when detecting an overwhelming number of projectiles. The class of vessel in question is different. In addition to having more powerful interstellar missile interception capabilities, it can even intercept small, high-speed electromagnetic projectiles. The ultra-high precision radar scanning system equipped on it can accurately scan all objects larger than 0.01 cubic millimeters within a range of 1,000 kilometers, continuously mapping their trajectory in real time. Once a potential threat is detected, the electromagnetic and laser cannons can quickly engage under the radar system's guidance, accurately targeting and either firing lasers to alter their course or launching electromagnetic projectiles to change their direction through kinetic impact. Facing a minuscule target traveling at hundreds of kilometers per second from several hundred kilometers away, hitting it with a laser or an electromagnetic projectile requires incredible precision in control and response speed, something unimaginable in the past. Yet, this system has now been realized on this class of vessel. During actual exercises, this system demonstrated astonishing effectiveness, standing immobile and purely defensive while over 100 other vessels engaged in full offensive mode from over 1,000 kilometers away. The combined firepower unleashed by hundreds of electromagnetic cannons resulted in thousands of projectiles launched at it every second. Even a starship of Nebula class would have been destroyed under such an assault. However, this Comet-class starship, thanks to its active defense system, managed to evade over 95 of the electromagnetic projectiles and laser fire aimed at it. The few remaining projectiles were blocked by its heavy armor. While the storm raged, it stood firm. The formidable combat capability of the Comet-class starship was evident, proving to be a force that could influence the entire battlefield. At this moment, even its creator expressed genuine admiration, but it was just too costly. Reflecting on the construction process of this Comet-class starship made the creator's heart bleed. The special alloy used for its armor was merely a small portion of the precious materials consumed. The rest, including the internal communication system, the rapid rotation systems for the electromagnetic and laser cannons, and various components of the high-precision radar, were all incredibly challenging to produce. This was one of the reasons why such an automated defense system could not be widely adopted on starships of Stardust and Nebula classes. Besides being too large and complex, it was simply too expensive. The creator knew that he couldn't produce that many materials and components in a short time. With this Comet-class starship, he felt that his combat system was finally complete. The Stardust, Nebula, and Comet classes of starships each had their roles: frontline combat, regional support, and strategic assistance, making the fleet a cohesive unit capable of unleashing greater combat power. Only at this moment did he feel a bit more at ease, knowing that he was no longer an easy target, vulnerable to anyone who came along. He truly had a certain level of self-defense capability. Even if he couldn't defeat the enemy, he could still inflict some damage with his military strength. His gaze turned once again toward the direction of a certain star system. Observations of this star system had been ongoing for centuries. The data indicated that the war in that system had not ceased, but rather intensified. He silently hoped that they would not provoke him. He just wanted to develop quietly without conflict with any civilization or faction. Yet he also clearly understood that without powerful military strength, peace was merely an empty phrase. The scale of the fleet needed to expand. At least 3 Comet-class starships were needed to barely suffice. There should be at least 500 Nebula-class starships and at least 20 Stardust-class starships. He made up his mind. In the vast emptiness of space, a massive ship shaped like a character, stretching over 10 kilometers long, was rapidly decelerating under the thrust of hundreds of thousands of engines spread across its body. When its speed decreased to 10 times the speed of light, approximately 30,000 kilometers per second, it came to a halt. Inside the cabin, in the hibernation chamber, the commander of the Mozodi civilization's 7th Fleet, Emojua, slowly opened his 3 eyes and sat up with some fatigue. A message translated into the Mozodi language appeared in his ears. The spacecraft had already reached its designated position and slowed down to the planned speed. Emojua, it's time for you to set out with your fleet. Chapter 59. Mozodi civilization. Emojua knew that it was the captain of the spacecraft, Yun Guang, who was speaking to him. Although he was aware that Yun Guang could not see him, Emojua instinctively adopted a respectful demeanor. Yes, Captain Yun Guang. Despite being the commander of the 7th Fleet, one of the 29 fleets of the Mozodi civilization, and holding significant power within the military, Yun Guang was merely the captain of a spacecraft, considered a mid-level officer at best. However, Emojua still had to maintain his respect. This Yun Guang was a mid-level officer in the military of the Nanxing civilization, which was a genuine Type 3 civilization, while his own Mozodi civilization was only a Type 2 civilization. There were more than a dozen Type 2 civilizations under the Nanxing civilization, and Mozodi was just an ordinary one among them. While he was considered important within his own civilization, he was nothing here in the Nanxing civilization. Moreover, it was said that Yun Guang had strong connections within the military of the Nanxing civilization and had considerable backing. If Emojua offended him, he might not even be able to rely on the protection of the civilization's leader. After getting out of the hibernation chamber, Emojua quickly made his way to the designated area within the spacecraft, called for the senior officers of the fleet, and prepared to discuss the next steps of action. As his subordinates and colleagues gradually woke up, they gathered in the conference room. Emojua scanned the attendees with a commanding gaze from his 3 eyes. The participants sat up straight, each maintaining a serious posture. Captain Yun Guang has notified us that we have reached our destination. The Yun Guang spacecraft is currently maintaining a speed of 10 times the speed of light. We will depart from the mothership in 3 days and proceed to the solar system for subsequent operations. The deputy commander quietly complained. Can't we slow down a bit? If we have to decelerate from 10 times the speed of light on our own, we might use up more than half of our fuel. Interstellar travel is so troublesome. There's no resistance in space, and if we don't decelerate, the ship will continue at its original speed indefinitely. Since they were heading to the solar system, they had to reduce their speed to a certain level before reaching it. Otherwise, they would simply pass through the solar system without being able to stop. Decelerating from 10 times the speed of light, which is about 30,000 kilometers per second, to a speed of several dozen kilometers per second would consume as much fuel as accelerating from several dozen kilometers per second to 30,000 kilometers per second. The Yun Guang spacecraft was manufactured using Type 3 civilization technology by the Nanxing civilization, which had extremely high energy efficiency, far surpassing that of the Mozodi civilization. The fuel consumed to decelerate from 10 times the speed of light to about 10 kilometers per second would be significantly less than what the Mozodi ships would require to achieve the same deceleration. That is why the deputy commander is complaining. Emojua said irritably, let the Southern Star civilization send its space mothership to escort us to the solar system. Our civilization has already paid a significant price for this. It was only because the Southern Star civilization was struggling with logistics in the Wangliang 3 battlefield and urgently needed our civilization to mine resources that they agreed to this. They were considerate enough to slow down to 10 times the speed of light to let us disembark. The Southern Star civilization had been engaged in a fierce battle with another level 3 civilization, the Blue Moon civilization, in the Wangliang star system. Both sides were stubborn and had invested countless resources in warships. The stalemate had lasted for several hundred years so far. As a subordinate civilization of the Southern Star civilization, the Mozodi civilization seized the opportunity of the Southern Star civilization's logistical difficulties and proactively applied to come to the solar system, not far from the Wangliang star system, to develop minerals to supply the battlefield needs of the Southern Star civilization. If resource extraction went smoothly, and they could supply abundant mineral resources to the Southern Star civilization, it was estimated that the Mozodi civilization could earn about 1 billion Southern Star dollars annually. 1 billion Southern Star dollars could purchase many machines or services that could only be manufactured by Level 3 civilization technology. It is worth noting that a life extension service at the Level 3 civilization technology could extend the lifespan of someone like Emojua by approximately 500 years, costing only 1 million Southern Star dollars. In other words, if their 7th fleet performed well, the money earned in a year could allow up to 1 000 people in their civilization to receive life extension. Given the current war situation, the conflict between the Southern Star Civilization and the Blue Moon Civilization was likely to continue for several hundred years. This meant that their project of supplying resources to the battlefield could also last for several hundred years. Earning 1,000 extensions a year over several hundred years would mean they could acquire hundreds of thousands of life extension opportunities. Besides life extension, the machines, products, or services that could be produced by Level 3 civilization technology were numerous. The reserves of Southern Star dollars in their civilization had always been insufficient, and now they had a great opportunity to earn Southern Star dollars, which they must seize and not mess up. Especially since renting the Southern Star Civilization's Cloudlight space mothership to send their fleet to the solar system had already cost as much as 700 million Southern Star dollars. If they didn't perform well and couldn't earn money, that amount would be a total loss. Upon returning to their civilization, they would certainly face consequences. Their leader had high hopes for them, and they could not afford to disappoint. Emoju silently resolved to succeed. After much discussion, Moju finally worked out the specific arrangements for disembarking 3 days later with his subordinates and colleagues. At this moment, 200,000 fleet soldiers and 1,000 workers had already awakened. Inspections and adjustments of the 3,000 combat ships and 1,000 industrial ships had begun. Coming to the solar system, mining was the main task, but they could not do so without military force. The wars between Level 3 civilizations were prolonged and could easily involve hundreds of star systems. The Blue Moon Civilization, which was hostile to the Southern Star Civilization, was unlikely to send military forces here, as they could not see the solar system from their position. Of course, if that civilization from the Blue Moon really sent a fleet at the level of a third-tier civilization to this solar system, then Majwa could only consider himself unfortunate. No matter how many more warships he had, even if his 7th fleet was the strongest, best equipped, and most well-trained fleet within their civilization, and even if he himself was hailed as a military rising star and a genius in warfare, Majwa had no illusions about defeating even a single fleet from a third-tier civilization. The gap between civilization levels cannot be bridged by the number of ships. However, this probability is quite low, and Majwa was not overly concerned. What he was primarily wary of was that a certain second-tier civilization belonging to the Blue Moon Civilization might have set its sights on the solar system for mining. If that were the case, a conflict would be inevitable, and his battle fleet would then have a role to play. Chapter 60. 150 years coordinating and arranging the disembarkation matters kept Majwa, who had just awakened from hibernation, busy for over 20 hours before everything was finally settled. At this moment, he could finally take a break and get some sleep. During this time, he thought again of the somewhat aged figure of the leader of their civilization. The Southern Star Civilization has 17 second-tier civilizations under its command. Our civilization, Mozodi, could originally rank in the top 3, but now has fallen to beyond the 10th position. In the darkness, Mozodi lay quietly on the bed, still pondering silently. As a senior military officer and a rising star in the military, Majwa understood the true situation of the Mozodi civilization very clearly. The other affiliated civilizations were working hard to improve their rankings in order to secure their safety. However, our Mozodi civilization had become increasingly lax over the past thousands of years. The civilization was indulging in pleasure, with the upper echelons squandering extravagantly. Most of the precious Southern Star foreign exchange had been exchanged for luxury goods produced by the Southern Star Civilization. The leader attempted to revitalize the civilization, but the internal resistance was too great, making progress very difficult. Before I set off, our civilization had a great opportunity to obtain permission to purchase a decommissioned space carrier from the Southern Star military. Once purchased successfully, our military strength would greatly increase, allowing us to gain an advantage in the wars against other second-tier civilizations. But Majwa couldn't help but smile wryly. Due to the limited Southern Star foreign exchange, purchasing the space carrier would squeeze the import quota for luxury goods, resulting in the upper echelons lacking their dream perfumes, not having gene-modified starfish to eat, insufficient beauty treatments for the wives of the upper echelons, and not enough bionic robots for their families. The proposal to purchase the space carrier was unexpectedly rejected. Even with the leader's strong push, it could not be approved. Hopefully, this mining project will allow our civilization's Southern Star foreign exchange to be somewhat more sufficient. In this way, the leader can have a bit more leeway and truly do things that benefit civilization. Emojua knows very well that it is precisely because he is a high-ranking military official with genuine patriotism and his abilities are more outstanding than others that the leader can withstand immense pressure and ultimately entrust the mining project to him. The leader understands that only Emojua can handle this task well. If it were someone else, even managing to get half of the foreign exchange earned from the mining project into the national treasury would be considered a success. The other half would certainly disappear into the pockets of officials at various levels through processes that are fundamentally untraceable. Leader, you can rest assured. I will definitely manage things well here. I pray that our civilization can regain its former glory under your leadership. With silent prayers, Emojua drifted into sleep. For the next 2 days, he remained busy. Over 1 million soldiers, workers, and engineers, along with more than 4,000 spacecraft, involved an overwhelming number of people and matters. Fortunately, Emojua was not someone who relied on connections and flattery to rise through the ranks. He was able to organize everything in an orderly manner. Finally, it was time to disembark. Emojua and the fleet's senior officials arrived on the flagship, the Glory. The Glory is a large combat spacecraft constructed with peak Level 2 civilization technology. It possesses extremely powerful firepower and defense, having made significant contributions during the civilization's external wars. There are fewer than 70 combat spacecraft of the same class throughout the entire Mozodi civilization, with 4 of them belonging to the 7th Fleet. Now, all 4 of these highest-level warships of the civilization had been brought to the solar system by Emojua. At this moment, in the control room of the Glory, the voice of Captain Yun Guang of the Yun Guang space carrier came through again. Emojua, I will unlock in 30 seconds. Understood. 30 seconds later, the Yun Guang space carrier released the ships and engineering vessels of the 7th Fleet, which had been tightly secured with cables, simultaneously unlocking and disconnecting from the Yun Guang. Lock has been released. Affirmative. Emojua solemnly responded and issued commands to the captains of the 4,000 warships and engineering vessels through the communication system. Begin maneuvering. The 4,000 spacecraft simultaneously activated their ion propulsion systems. Under the bright light, the vast expanse of space saw the 4,000 ships descend, increasing the distance from the Yun Guang space carrier. When the distance expanded to over 100 kilometers, Yun Guang's voice came through once more. Emojua, goodbye. I will come to the solar system in 150 years. I hope you can mine enough quantity and variety of minerals. Goodbye, Captain Yun Guang. I look forward to seeing you again in 150 years. I also wish the Great South Star civilization victory in the war. After the farewell, the massive Yun Guang space carrier began to adjust its spacecraft's posture. Once completed, tens of thousands of ion thrusters were activated simultaneously to accelerate it. It will eventually accelerate to 80 times the speed of light, which is 240,000 kilometers per second. This is a speed that a Type 2 civilization, like the Mozodi civilization, cannot even imagine. The spacecraft manufactured by a Type 2 civilization, even those specifically designed for interstellar travel, typically reach a maximum speed of only 15 times the speed of light, which is considered quite good. Any higher speed is simply unattainable. Even if it could barely achieve such speeds, it would continue to drift indefinitely due to insufficient fuel to decelerate. The technological gap between civilizations is indeed vast. Emojua knows that this space carrier will first reach another star system, where it will transport the minerals mined by another civilization over the years to the battlefield. After that, it will carry back the ships and machinery that need repairs to their home territory. Then it will set off again, and 150 years later, it will return to the solar system to transport the accumulated minerals back. His task is to extract and produce enough resources during these 150 years to support the war efforts of the Southern Star civilization. Time is already tight, and now, slowing down from 10 times the speed of light to a complete stop to travel to the solar system will take another 30 years. There is no time to waste. A total of 4,000 spacecraft slowly gathered together, forming a relatively loose formation as per Emoju's instructions. Then, all 4,000 ships simultaneously began to decelerate. Many ion thrusters started to emit light towards the star known as the Sun. Under the propulsion of this light, the speed of these ships decreased by 32 centimeters every second. This is the most economical and fuel-efficient deceleration plan. Chapter 61. Stay by decelerating for a full 30 years. The fleet will reduce its speed to just a few dozen kilometers per second relative to the Sun by the time it reaches the solar system. Whatever needs to be done will be much more convenient then. Solar system, here I come. Gazing at the distant bright star, which is no different from the other stars, Emoju silently said to himself, this will be the starting point for our civilization's resurgence. I swear it. At this moment, above Jupiter's moon Ganymede in the solar system, a report from an infrared telescope caught Chen Yu's attention and plunged him into confusion. An infrared ray source suddenly appeared in the Tianyuan 4 direction. Strange. What could this be? Infrared light has a stronger penetrating ability than visible light. Some small stars that are invisible in the visible light spectrum are clearly seen in the infrared spectrum. It was precisely due to the advancement of infrared astronomy that human civilization discovered many new stars around the Sun that had never been seen before. Chen Yu has also been diligent in this field for centuries. However, the suddenly appearing infrared ray source has characteristics that are completely different from those of stars. In particular, its sudden appearance is even more peculiar. Chen Yu redirected some of his processing power to this observation and began to examine it more closely. This observation quickly yielded surprising results. What is this? Such a significant blue shift? Just like sound. A train approaches a person at an extremely high speed, and the sound becomes increasingly shrill. When the train moves away, the sound suddenly becomes muffled. Light behaves similarly. When a light source is near an observation device, the characteristics of the light observed differ from when the source is moving away. The characteristics of a source approaching are called blue shift, while those of a source receding are termed red shift. The greater the blue shift or red shift, the faster the source is moving toward or away from the observer. At this moment, Chen Yu observed a significant blue shift from the suddenly appearing light source, indicating that it was approaching him at an incredibly high speed. A simple calculation revealed its speed to be nearly 30,000 kilometers per second, almost reaching 10 times the speed of light. What an astonishing speed! Under natural cosmic conditions, it is almost impossible for such high-speed celestial bodies to form. Since it wasn't a natural formation, it must be an artificial object. Therefore, it must be an alien spacecraft. Chen Yu immediately reached this conclusion and became anxious. Could it be that the war in the Wangliang star system, which had been calm for several hundred years, finally reached this place? His first thought was to escape immediately to another star system to continue his development. At this stage, he had only just grasped theoretical interstellar travel capabilities. Facing an enemy capable of large-scale movement from another star system to the solar system, he felt utterly unprepared. However, calculations indicated that the alien fleet suggested by that light source would arrive in the solar system in about 9 to 10 years. Yet, he currently had no spacecraft capable of interstellar travel. Theoretically possessing interstellar travel capability meant that Chen Yu had calculated that under ideal conditions, using deuterium-tritium nuclear fusion as energy and ion propulsion as power, he should, mind you, should be able to reach another relatively nearby star system. But he had never tested it. Whether it would actually work was known only to fate. Moreover, even if he were to embark on interstellar travel in haste to escape the solar system to another star system, he would at least need a suitable spacecraft. The transport ships and numerous combat vessels he had built were not capable of interstellar voyages. It had to be a large transport ship. 10 years was simply not enough time to build an interstellar transport vessel. Escape was impossible. Damn it, Chen Yu cursed quietly. He gathered more observational resources to focus on that light source, trying to calculate as much information and intelligence as possible. Gradually, Chen Yu discovered that this menacing alien fleet did not seem to possess the technological level he had imagined. Why did they begin to decelerate nearly a light year away from the solar system? The deceleration rate was only a few centimeters per square second. Their maximum speed appeared to be only 10 times the speed of light, although 10 times the speed of light was astonishing. It was not too far from Chen Yu's own capabilities. Chen Yu has been accumulating technology for interstellar travel. 60 years ago, he launched a scientific research vessel towards the edge of the solar system, exploring the environmental conditions while also validating the feasibility of long-duration acceleration engines. As of today, the vessel has been in flight for a full 60 years. In the first 20 years, it was in an accelerated state, even accumulating a speed of 4 times the speed of light, which is approximately 12,000 kilometers per second. A few years ago, through 16 large array antennas positioned in a solar orbit, Chen Yu maintained contact with the vessel, which was roughly 50 trillion kilometers away, or about 0.52 light-years. Eventually, the distance became too great, and communication was lost. This experiment demonstrated that a cruising speed of 10 times the speed of light is not far-fetched for Chen Yu, and he likely could achieve it. Based on this situation, Chen Yu made another hypothesis. Perhaps this distant extraterrestrial civilization's technological level is similar to his own? They might only be barely capable of interstellar travel. As more observational information arrived, Chen Yu grew increasingly confident in his hypothesis. It seemed they also employed ion propulsion, which should be more efficient than his, though he wasn't sure by how much. It likely wasn't significantly more, otherwise the spectrum would not appear as it did now. After considering various information, Chen Yu finally made a decision. There was no escaping, so he would stay. Besides, they might not necessarily come to wage war against him. He would adapt as necessary, and if it came to it, he would fight. Of course, war was the last resort. If peaceful coexistence were possible, that would be ideal. Especially since, at this moment, Chen Yu knew almost nothing about matters beyond the solar system. He was unaware of whether civilizations outside the solar system were interconnected, if there were alliances, or if any so-called codes of civilization existed. If such codes did exist, what would they entail? If peaceful coexistence could be achieved and he could gain intelligence from this civilization, that would be even better. Chapter 62. Preparedness. Chen Yu deeply understood a truth. Whether within humanity or outside of it, one's own safety can never rely on the mercy of others. Only by possessing the necessary material resources can true peace be achieved. Therefore, it was time to expand military preparations. Before the other party reached the solar system, he would do everything possible to build more warships and possess stronger military power. Chen Yu solemnly made this decision. Following this decision, all previous development plans were put on hold. All tasks were subordinated to this highest priority requirement. Chen Yu even recalled the computational resources previously allocated to numerous research centers aimed at advancing his technological progress. Scientific research could be conducted at any time. Right now, military preparedness was the top priority. In just one day, Chen Yu formulated a preparedness plan. At this stage, he did not have the capability to defend the entire solar system. This was evident. It meant that within the solar system, he needed to focus on certain planets. Currently, the two most important celestial bodies for Chen Yu are naturally the gas giant and the red planet. As for the others, such as the inner planets and the ice giants, he has only conducted shallow development on them, incurring minimal sunk costs, so they can be temporarily abandoned. Regardless, it is essential to firmly hold onto the gas giant system and the red planet. The gas giant system can provide nearly limitless fusion fuel, while the red planet offers vast mineral resources. As long as he can secure these two celestial bodies and ensure that the supply lines remain intact, he can claim to be in an invincible position. Although relinquishing the other 5 large planets will undoubtedly give the opposing side some breathing room and allow them to obtain stable resources and energy sources, qualifying them to wage a prolonged war against him. When it comes to a war of attrition, Chen Yu believes he has no reason to fear anyone. With the decision to firmly defend the gas giant and the red planet made, Chen Yu began to formulate specific defense strategies. However, this is merely the current strategic outline. How the war will be fought specifically will depend on subsequent developments, requiring adaptability and timely adjustments. Sticking rigidly to established rules and limiting himself with set frameworks is not an option. The fleet must not be lacking. However, his computational power may not be sufficient to control too many ships. Nevertheless, it is still necessary to build more ships. At worst, he can stockpile them, replacing losses on the front lines with reinforcements from the rear. Additionally, since the red planet is too far away for him to control combat ships in real time, this could put him at a disadvantage during battles. Thus, developing automated defense systems is the only option. With the overall strategic goals and specific defense strategies confirmed, Chen Yu immediately shifted into high gear, channeling his immense computational power into military readiness. From this moment on, factories across the red planet and every significant moon in the gas giant system roared back to life after a period of temporary silence. This previous quiet was due to the completion of planetary development, which had reduced demand. Now, the factories were bustling again, driven by renewed needs. Not only those factories, but the mining sites that had been in a semi-shutdown state were also flooded with a massive influx of mining trucks and robots. Numerous mining facilities resumed operations, with iron, copper, lithium, gold, silver, rare earth, tin, and nickel mines collectively numbering in the hundreds of thousands, making a deafening racket. The vast resources produced led to heavy freight trains, numbering in the tens of thousands, thundering along the crisscrossing railways day and night. In space, heavy transport ships connecting the red planet and the gas giant were lined up, making frequent trips between the two celestial bodies. Within the gas giant's atmosphere, the number of aircraft had increased to 10,000, capable of refining millions of tons of fusion fuel daily. A large amount of fusion fuel was transported to the red planet, feeding the fusion power stations and becoming the fuel that powered the prosperity of the entire planet. Meanwhile, vast mineral resources arrived at the gas giant system, entering various metal casting and processing plants, transforming into numerous components. These components were then sent to shipyards, where they were assembled into spacecraft. At this moment, Chen Yu has built 10 space docks capable of producing combat spacecraft. Among these 10 docks, one is dedicated to manufacturing the largest and most powerful Comet-class warships. 2 docks are used for constructing the second-tier Nebula-class warships, while the remaining 7 are entirely allocated for building the smallest Stardust-class warships. On average, 100 Stardust-class warships are produced each day. The construction of Nebula-class ships is much slower. They are too large and technologically advanced, requiring nearly 2 days to complete one. The Comet-class warships are even more challenging, taking almost 8 months for a single ship to be built. Chen Yu has pushed production capacity to its limits in the realm of combat spacecraft. However, this is not the entirety of Chen Yu's preparedness plan. Beyond the spacecraft, he is also constructing additional military facilities. First, there are the interstellar artillery platforms. These platforms are divided into several different levels and models, but they all share a common trait. They are stationary and lack propulsion. They can only orbit a specific celestial body, such as Mars or the moons of Jupiter. These interstellar artillery platforms are powered by nuclear fusion reactors. Depending on their model and level, some are equipped only with electromagnetic cannons. while others have laser cannons or even interstellar missiles. There are also minesweeping platforms filled with numerous interstellar mines that can be deployed as needed. Additionally, there are self-destruct platforms that will detonate their powerful hydrogen bombs when the time is right, sweeping away everything tangible and intangible in the vicinity. There are electromagnetic interference platforms capable of emitting strong signals to disrupt communications and the operation of onboard instruments. Chunyu has set no limits on the number of interstellar artillery platforms. He intends to produce as many as possible, ideally encircling both Mars and Jupiter. Beyond the interstellar artillery, there are ground and underground defense facilities. These cannot employ self-destruct weapons, as they would interfere with other installations. This aspect primarily focuses on electromagnetic cannons, laser cannons, and interstellar missiles. In addition, there are countless satellites, including reconnaissance satellites, armed satellites, communication satellites, and jamming satellites, all deployed throughout the vast space of the solar system. There is also one crucial weapon: interstellar mines. Each mine is roughly the size of a palm and weighs only a few hundred grams. While they cannot be outfitted with nuclear devices, they are equipped with Chunyu's latest development, the most powerful chemical explosive known as all-nitrogen anion salt. These mines even possess slight propulsion capabilities, allowing for limited positional movement. Before producing metals akin to the core of Jupiter, all-nitrogen anion salt is arguably the most powerful explosive available, aside from nuclear weapons. Its power exceeds that of standard explosives by more than 10 times. Of course, due to the smaller amount of explosive material in the current space age, a high-speed electromagnetic projectile may not stand out in a highly energetic environment. However, that is of no concern, as their quantity is sufficiently large. Moreover, it is sufficiently concealed to remain hidden in one place for a long time. Chunyu's positioning of it is akin to a small piranha. A single piranha is tiny, possibly no larger than a fingertip, and can only bite off a small piece of flesh. However, when gathered in groups, piranhas can quickly strip a large animal down to its bones. This is the effect Chunyu desires. This thing is simple and convenient to produce, with abundant raw materials. So Chunyu directly opened tens of thousands of production lines to begin mass and unrestricted production. On average, Chunyu can manufacture up to 600 million interstellar mines each day. Once enough are accumulated, they are transported to space by a large number of heavy transport ships, which carry them away and disperse them there. Combat ships, interstellar artillery, ground defense weapons, satellite systems, mine systems, and so on, together form Chunyu's planetary defense system. At this moment, Chunyu's immense industrial capacity has fully erupted, engaging in military preparations without regard for consequences and at any cost. In the distant reaches of space, the deceleration operation has been ongoing for several years. The vast fleet of the Mozodi civilization has been emitting bright light in the direction of their destination throughout this time. Within the fleet, most members have once again fallen into a state of hibernation, awaiting the moment of arrival at their destination. Maju is no exception. As the highest commander of the fleet, his life would not be wasted on such a meaningless wait. But today, he has been awakened. Have we reached the target star system? Commander, not yet. We are still approximately 1 trillion kilometers away from the target star. The reason for waking you is due to an extremely important matter that requires your attention. Only you can handle this. Maju's 3 eyes were filled with seriousness as he fixed his gaze on the deputy commander responsible for the fleet during this time, waiting for further explanation. The deputy commander said, "We have detected signs of civilization in the target star system, and it appears to be quite active." Maju's first reaction was disbelief. How is that possible? Wasn't the solar system already cleared? How could there still be civilization? And an active one at that? But the facts are indeed as stated. Look, the deputy commander presented a wealth of data. The enormous display screen showed the analysis conclusions from onboard experts, whether from planetary spectral variations, neutrino detections, or several other types of measurements. All indicated that there was indeed a relatively active civilization currently present in the solar system. Could it be a remnant from the previous clearance? The last sweep was not thorough, and the secondary primitive civilization that existed in the solar system did not completely perish. Their remnants rebuilt civilization in this star system? Could it be that they have even advanced to the level of a secondary intermediate civilization? The deputy commander said worriedly. We have reason to believe they have already detected our fleet. At this stage, they must have begun preparations for military action. Our fleet may encounter trouble. Even if it's just a secondary intermediate civilization, our side, being a secondary advanced civilization, is not a single civilization, but merely a fleet. Moreover, we are undertaking a long expedition, while the opponent is resting and waiting. Combined, the enemy is not without the strength to fight back. They may even cause us significant trouble. Thinking about the task we bear this time, recalling the leader's earnest instructions before departure, And remembering the considerable effort the leader had to put in to gather the funds needed to lease the Cloudlight-class aerospace carrier to escort our fleet to the solar system, the deputy commander became increasingly worried. However, unexpectedly, he saw Commander Maju's 3 eyes seemingly light up at the same time. Subsequently, Maju visibly became excited and thrilled. Damn it, the god of Sirius has finally begun to favor our civilization. The god of Sirius is a deity widely worshipped by the biological beings of the Mozodi civilization. The deputy commander was even more astonished, instinctively doubting whether Maju had lost his mind. He then saw Maju jump up and excitedly start to spin around on the ground. Commander, wake up all the senior fleet members immediately for a meeting. The next day, all the senior fleet members gathered in the conference room of the Glory-class spacecraft. Maju reported this discovery. While many senior fleet members felt quite anxious, he was full of enthusiasm. Our Mozodi civilization has the chance to revive with this one action. The last cleanup was not thorough, and there were some that slipped through the cracks. If we can eliminate these, how many rewards and currency will we receive from the Southern Star civilization? Perhaps they will even grant us the qualification to purchase strategic assets like aerospace carriers. Our civilization will soar and rise to one of the top 3 affiliated civilizations of the Southern Star. The deputy commander still had some worries and reminded, eliminating the remaining threats can indeed bring back a lot of rewards. But currently, we do not have enough confidence to ensure victory, based on a comprehensive estimate. If we consider the opponent as a normal secondary intermediate civilization, our 7th fleet only has about an 85% chance of winning against an entire civilization. The safest plan is still to report this matter to the Southern Star civilization. There will be some rewards for that, though less, but still sufficient. An 85% chance of winning seems high, but let us not forget there is still a 15% chance of failure. If we fail, losing a fleet is minor. The most critical part is that it will affect the leader's overall strategic planning. The consequences are too severe for anyone to bear. The Southern Star civilization is 27 light years away. It will take us 54 years to receive a reply, and we would be waiting idly during that time. And who says we must eliminate this secondary intermediate civilization first? A cruel smile appeared on Maju's face. Why not conquer them instead? Conquer? The subordinates were somewhat confused. That's right, conquer them, Maju smiled and said. First, let us conquer them, make them obey our orders, and help us exploit the resources within the solar system. As the spacecraft approaches, we believe we have already infiltrated this civilization to a certain extent. By that time, we can eliminate them, claiming the credit for the eradication of a civilization in exchange for rewards. Chapter 64. Peace. Maju's plan left his subordinates momentarily stunned, but they quickly became invigorated. Indeed, this is a viable approach. First, conquering will certainly face less resistance than annihilation. After assessing the strength of both sides, it is highly likely that this secondary intermediate civilization within the solar system will choose to submit to temporarily avoid war. This civilization is clearly a native one, unaware of the existence of any alliance, and cannot possibly know that wild civilizations would be purged by it. If they were aware, how could they dare to remain in the solar system for development after experiencing a purge? They would have fled long ago. Since they are unaware that our only option is to ultimately eradicate them, the conquest under the guise of win-win cooperation has a high chance of deceiving them. Moreover, higher civilizations exert a natural suppression over lower ones, both culturally and technologically. In this context, infiltrating this native civilization will be quite simple. While infiltrating, we will corrode, control, and cultivate rebels within their civilization, supporting factions that lean towards us, while also requiring them to participate in our mineral extraction operations. This way, not only can we increase our mineral output to exchange for more resources, but we can also further numb them. When the spacecraft arrives, we will launch a surprise attack, defeating and annihilating them in one fell swoop, thus reaping all the benefits for ourselves. Maju's face was filled with excitement. Our ships, our weapons, our defense capabilities, our communication abilities, and our survivability can all crush this secondary intermediate civilization. So what if we have fewer ships? We can still overpower them. In this way, we will not only gather enough resources to earn ample rewards, but also receive bonuses for clearing any remaining threats from their civilization. 2 rewards. Our civilization will thus have the opportunity to soar. One staff member's face turned red as he quickly input Maju's plan into the simulation system. After a round of simulations, he became even more excited. The data showed that if we choose conquest rather than destruction, the success rate of our plan will be as high as 99. Even if the plan fails, we will still have enough leeway to rectify the situation and prevent it from spiraling out of control. The atmosphere in the operational meeting room suddenly became lively. Let's do it. With such a great opportunity and such a high success rate, why not? This must be a blessing from the divine, granting the Mozodi civilization an exceptional chance for revitalization. Missing this opportunity would surely invite divine retribution. more staff and fleet commanders were awakened. Numerous military elites from the Mozodi civilization gathered together, taking several months to devise a detailed operational plan outline. The outline considered every step of contact with the native civilization of the solar system. For every possible reaction from them, corresponding countermeasures were prepared. Based on the technological strength of the opponent and the potential for warfare at this technological level, military elites have made detailed speculations and developed comprehensive combat plans accordingly. After the outline was completed, it underwent 3 months of examination and discussion, with gradual modifications and improvements made to ensure absolute precision, aiming to reduce the already minimal failure probability even closer to zero. Once the outline was fully established, the entire fleet entered a state of combat readiness. Resources and energy were placed under military control, and soldiers began to practice tactics during the deceleration process, creating a bustling atmosphere within the fleet, brimming with vitality. At this moment, the distance between the fleet and the star had shortened to approximately 300 billion kilometers. In less than 2 years, the fleet would cross the orbit of the largest planet on the outer edge of this star system, which was generally regarded within the Alliance as a true entry into the opponent's star system. At this distance, even without precise point-to-point communication mechanisms, the fleet could initiate dialogue with a native civilization solely through broadcast communication. Based on the combat outline, the fleet should first demonstrate goodwill on board the flagship. In the main control room, under the watchful eyes of numerous commanders and staff, the commander solemnly pressed the send button, broadcasting a message to the star system. He believed that given the technological capabilities displayed by the native civilization, they should be able to receive and decipher the message. At this moment, at the Jupiter base, the preparations led by Chunyu had been ongoing for several years. Based on reconnaissance of the fleet, Chunyu confirmed that in about 2 years, the two sides would truly meet. Perhaps I should send them a message first, indicating that the solar system is the territory of human civilization and warning them. Chunyu thought to himself, of course, this wouldn't be of much use, and it wouldn't make them abandon their plans to enter the star system. However, as long as there was interaction between the two sides, it would always be possible to gather some information about them. Just as Chunyu was still undecided about whether to proactively send a message, a communication from the mysterious fleet arrived. This message was transmitted via radio waves, a communication method Chunyu was very familiar with. The message was lengthy and complex, approximately 3 gigabytes in size according to Chunyu's storage specifications. So large, Chunyu attempted to input the message into a decryption model and immediately found the decryption to be quite easy and smooth. Upon reviewing the content, Chunyu realized that this message was actually a dictionary of sorts. It turned out that when different civilizations in the universe communicate for the first time, they must follow such a rule, selecting a large number of representative phrases from their own language, packaging them, and sending them to the other party specifically for decryption, to facilitate understanding of their language and pave the way for future exchanges. For a relatively advanced civilization, as long as there is a sufficient sample size of a language system, it becomes easy to decipher it by analyzing the frequency of certain words or characters, their associated vocabulary, their positions in sentences, their functions, distribution patterns, and other such information. It was certainly not difficult for Chunyu to decipher the dictionary information provided specifically for him. He quickly mastered the language system of the other party. As a result, he was finally able to understand the meaning of a small segment of text following a large amount of dictionary information. Clearly, this small segment was what the other party truly wanted to convey. We come for peace. Chapter 65. The only road we come for peace? Chunyu was momentarily stunned. Then he sneered inwardly. Although he was not a politician on Earth and did not understand politics, even with an ordinary person's awareness, he could tell that this statement was pure nonsense. We come for peace. If it were truly for peace, then you shouldn't have come at all. It would be better if everyone kept to their own business. We are from the distant Mozodi civilization. Our home star system has become uninhabitable due to the aging of the star. We have been forced to embark on a journey, roaming through the vast universe in search of a new home. Even a star like the sun, which seems eternal and unchanging, will eventually age. The sun is considered a small star in the universe. The smaller the star's mass, the longer its lifespan. Conversely, the larger the mass, the shorter the lifespan. A star like the sun has a lifespan of about 10 billion years. After the collapse of the primordial nebula, when the internal temperature and pressure are sufficient to ignite nuclear fusion, a star is born. Throughout its lifespan, it continues to undergo nuclear fusion, maintaining the balance between internal pressure and gravitational pressure, and gently releasing light and heat. During this process, as the internal fusion fuel is consumed and the overall elemental structure changes, the star will slowly expand, its surface temperature gradually decreasing, ultimately evolving into a red giant. When the sun reaches the end of its lifespan and becomes a red giant, even if the Earth does not perish, it will be consumed by the gradually expanding sunday. Furthermore, Although the sun's temperature decreases, its radiation will increase by several orders of magnitude. At that time, it will be clear that the solar system will no longer be suitable for life. This is what is meant by stellar aging. Is it truly because of the aging of your home star that you must flee your homeland in search of new star systems suitable for your survival? Yu remained noncommittal. The information from that mysterious fleet continued. In the process of searching for a new home, we passed through your solar system. Please rest assured, the environment of the solar system is not suitable for our survival, and we have no intention of competing with you for living space here. However, we need to make some supplies and collect some resources within the solar system before we can set off again and continue our journey. In the writings of the Mozodi civilization, the designation for the stellar system where Yu currently resides is certainly not referred to as the solar system. In the original text, this system is represented through certain positional coordinates and characteristics of the star system. Yu translated it into his own writing system as the solar system. Due to the urgent timeline, it would be difficult for our civilization to carry out resource gathering independently in time. Therefore, we sincerely hope to collaborate with your civilization to jointly undertake resource collection efforts. For the labor contributed by your civilization, we can negotiate a compensation plan, converting it into technological information that our civilization possesses or some products and machinery manufactured by us. As payment to you, this is a fair and just cooperation process from which both our civilizations can benefit. We pray that the flower of peace may forever bloom between our two civilizations. Yu chuckled coldly to himself. Cooperation? Cooperation requires both parties to be willing. Your civilization intruded into my homeland without my consent, and now, when you are almost at my doorstep and it is no longer possible to turn back after years of slowing down and consuming so many resources and energy, you propose cooperation? The coercive undertone in this suggestion was clear to Yu. He also understood that, just as he could estimate the technological level of the fleet by analyzing the type of its exhaust and the deceleration process, the other party could similarly assess their own technological level by analyzing him. The analysis would undoubtedly reveal that the technological level of the other civilization exceeded his own. You have technological superiority, military superiority, and yet you come unannounced, claiming to want to cooperate with me, leaving me any room to refuse? But damn it. Let us hold back for now, Yu thought. He truly did not want to start a war. As long as there was a glimmer of hope for peace, he would strive for it. At least for now, the other party had not shown any further malice beyond a hint of coercion. Well then, we might as well cooperate. If we can engage in civility, why resort to violence? Perhaps I could gain some benefits from this cooperation as well. After some contemplation, Yu finally decided to respond in this manner. On behalf of our human civilization, I warmly welcome our guests from afar. As you mentioned, peace is a common aspiration of every civilization. We are pleased to collaborate with your civilization and provide the necessary assistance. This message was also transmitted via radio waves to the fleet that was still billions of kilometers away at that moment. On the Glory spacecraft, in the control room, a smile reappeared on Emojua's face after receiving the reply from Yu. They had no other choice. Emojua smiled and said, "Cooperating with us is their only viable path." The first step of the plan had been successfully accomplished. In the following period, both sides engaged in friendly, enthusiastic, and frequent exchanges. The two parties discussed the details of their future cooperation and reached an agreement on the trade settlement method. They are also negotiating the resettlement of the civilization after its arrival in the solar system, with progress being smooth. However, Yu naturally could not fully trust this civilization that claimed to be from another world. While negotiating with the fleet, he was also waiting for his probes to reach the other fleet. Long before confirming the trajectory of the other party, Yu had launched numerous unmanned probes directly toward them. After such a long period of acceleration and travel, the probes were likely nearing an intersection with that fleet. Due to the high relative speed between both sides, his unmanned probes could only pass by the fleet, allowing for only a brief observation time. However, this was not a problem. After all, distant observation was different from close-range observation. These unmanned probes could still gather some intelligence. With just over a year until the other fleet would enter the solar system, the unmanned probes finally obtained crucial intelligence about the fleet from a distance of approximately 10 million kilometers. This intelligence caused Yu to smirk coldly. Indeed, the visitors were not well-intentioned. Chapter 66. Strategic Deception at a full 10 million kilometers away, and with the small size of his unmanned probes. Even if the other party's technology surpassed his own, it was unlikely they would be detected. However, this also made it extremely difficult for him to observe the other fleet. After all, compared to the vast distance of 10 million kilometers, the other ships were also quite small. Nevertheless, Yu did not expect to fully understand the other fleet. Obtaining some overall, rough information was sufficient. It was this information that made Yu realize something was off. By measuring the thrust power of the ship's exhaust, he discovered that all the vessels in this fleet were medium and small-sized ships, with not a single large ship in sight, let alone any super-large ships. How could a civilization migrating as a whole not possess large and super-large ships during interstellar migration? A civilization more advanced than his own must have hundreds of billions of inhabitants, right? Even if the aliens had a different physical structure and certain peculiarities, they must have at least tens of billions or even hundreds of millions of individuals, right? How could so many people fit into these medium and small ships? Moreover, without large and super-large ships, how would they manage the resources needed for their journey? Interstellar space is vast and empty, making it impossible to obtain any supplies. Based on this information, Chunyu was already certain that the claims made by this fleet about coming in peace and merely collecting some resources were absolute lies. Furthermore, since this fleet had engaged in deceptive behavior from the very beginning, could they possibly harbor any goodwill towards him? This was highly questionable. Chunyu coldly chuckled to himself. Most of these medium and small ships were likely warships, right? Bringing so many warships into my star system without my consent and employing deceitful tactics was an attempt to numb me, then take me down without a fight? The largest and most powerful Comet-class warship designed by Chunyu is only about 300 meters long at its maximum. In contrast, civilian spacecraft, such as immigration ships and large transport vessels, can easily reach lengths of 1 kilometer or even more. Warships are generally smaller than civilian ships, a trend that Chunyu has observed through practice. He believes that extraterrestrials would not be an exception to this rule. Since the fleet consists entirely of small to medium-sized vessels, Chunyu can only assume they are all warships, as long as there is a chance for peace. He does not wish for violence. Chunyu sighed inwardly. However, if you come with ill intentions, then I have no choice but to engage in conflict with you. At that moment, Chunyu had made up his mind to go to war. After making this decision, he became even more enthusiastic about the fleet that claimed to represent the Mozodi civilization. He frequently negotiated with them, meticulously discussing every detail of the cooperation process and obsessing over each specific benefit and loss. Esteemed commander of the Mozodi civilization fleet, after careful consideration, we have some differing opinions regarding your pricing for the integrated deuterium-tritium fusion efficient cooling device. We believe that while a more efficient cooling device does enhance overall power in deuterium-tritium fusion, it significantly raises the overall cost of the fusion reactor, increasing production difficulties. Therefore, the value of this device is not as high as you have stated. We propose a price reduction of 36 from your quoted price, which we find more appropriate. Additionally, we fully agree with your proposal for us to carry out the mining and refining of nickel ore, methane ore, and nitrogen compound-related minerals, with the final products being the trade items. However, you need to understand that due to our current technological level, the costs of these mining activities are quite high. If you insist on lowering the price, we will require you to provide some new technologies and processes that can help reduce costs. The 7th Fleet of the Mozodi civilization. Emoju glanced at the latest message from Chunyu and found it rather uninteresting, dismissing it. This civilization is quite tedious, entangled over the slightest matters. A deputy commander chuckled. This only proves how much they value this cooperation. It seems they are completely convinced by our words, just waiting to exchange minerals for technology after the collaboration begins. If they weren't fully convinced, how could they be so serious and earnest? Emoju smiled. Then let's make them a bit happier. Notify the negotiation team to concede another 3 on top of the original basis, and give them a surprise. Understood. The deputy commander took his leave. Emoju then stood in the control room, gazing at the image of the yellow star on the big screen. He muttered to himself, let them be happy for now. But this happiness is merely in advance. Later, they will have to repay it with sorrow. Time slowly passed. Through repeated tugging and negotiation, most of the cooperation details had been agreed upon. The navigation speed of the Mozodi civilization fleet has decreased from a high speed of 30,000 kilometers per second to less than 1,500 kilometers per second at this moment. We are now approximately 200 million kilometers away from the orbit of the outermost large planet. In less than 3 months, we will truly enter this star system. During this time, through the spy devices released earlier, Emojue observed frequent and large-scale fleet movements within the solar system. It seems that the civilization that calls itself humanity is nervously undertaking defensive tasks. This is quite normal. If this human civilization were completely unprepared for a previously unknown civilization, Emojue would find it strange and might even suspect it was a trap. Moreover, the scale of the other side's fleet movements is also reasonable. Overall calculations indicate that they have about 20,000 warships, which aligns well with their civilization's development history and technological level. Once our fleet truly enters the star system, everything will settle down, Emojue thought leisurely. At that moment, suddenly, a piercing alarm echoed throughout the ship. Emojue stood up abruptly, his 3 eyes filled with seriousness. Stay calm. What happened? Report immediately. A staff officer's voice, filled with panic, reached Emojue's auditory organs. Commander, the fleet's radar scanning system has detected a large number of small objects suspected to be interstellar mines ahead of our fleet's course, too numerous to estimate. In addition to the interstellar mines, there are approximately 10,000 ships, suspected to be warships. Due to the close distance and our high speed, we can no longer evade. We cannot evade. Chapter 67. Defeat. We have been ambushed by the human civilization. In that instant, this thought flashed through Emojua's mind, and he realized this reality. In this solar system, we encountered an ambush, and who else but the human civilization could be responsible? There are no third-party forces present. Upon confirming this fact, a tremendous sense of absurdity overwhelmed Emojua. Reality was starkly laid out before him, yet rationally and emotionally, Emojua still found it hard to believe. How is this possible? How could we be ambushed? By humans? This caught Emojua completely off guard, both strategically and tactically. Strategically, we held a significant technological and military advantage, and both sides were engaged in cooperative negotiations. The other side had shown great sincerity during the negotiations, even becoming entangled in numerous details, making it unlikely for them to take the initiative to launch a surprise attack. Tactically, our overall reconnaissance of the solar system had not revealed any signs of large-scale fleet movements. Could they have carried out fleet movements using extremely low power and very slow acceleration and deceleration? Because of the low power and slow acceleration, the radiation power of the ion thrusters is very low, making it difficult for us to detect. But this would require planning starting several years ago. Could it be that they made the decision to ambush us years ago? Moreover, as a commander ranked among the top in military training within the Mozodi civilization, with remarkable achievements and rich experience, I had certainly considered the possibility of an ambush in the opponent's operational outline. However, even if they were to launch a surprise attack, wouldn't it be after entering the inner part of the star system? There are no logistics here, and we can't obtain any supplies. It seems inappropriate to initiate an ambush in this situation. No matter how hard Emojua thought, he could not imagine that Shunyu would brazenly launch an attack at this location. All the staff in the 7th Fleet also failed to predict such an occurrence. This truly caught the entire fleet off guard. If it weren't for my strict military discipline and cautious personality, even here, I would not have relaxed the detection of the surrounding environment. We might not have been able to issue a warning and could only realize we were being ambushed after actually coming under attack. However, although caught off guard, Emojua was indeed a highly experienced and excellent commander. After a moment of shock, he quickly regained his composure. Dare to ambush us? Let's see what they are made of. Let them understand that a secondary intermediate civilization, which only masters basic nuclear fusion and ion propulsion technology, cannot be a match for a secondary advanced civilization. Eliminate them. Deploy spy satellites. Reconnaissance teams spread out. 1st and 2nd teams launch a frontal assault. 3rd and 4th teams provide cover. All personnel activate the automatic defense systems. A series of commands were issued rapidly. The well-trained soldiers of the 7th Fleet instinctively began to move to their respective positions according to the commander's orders and immediately executed the corresponding tactics. As if sensing the opponent's movements, a swarm of interstellar mines rushed toward the fleet, which was moving at high speed, like a beehive. Under the operation of the automatic mine-sweeping and defense systems, the electromagnetic cannons aboard the Mozodi civilization's 7th Fleet battleships were activated, firing countless small electromagnetic projectiles at high speed and with precise trajectories toward the interstellar mines, which were only the size of a fist and perfectly hidden in the dark universe. In an instant, hundreds of thousands of interstellar mines were destroyed. The next moment, Emojua saw that the human civilization's battleships also launched their attack. Miniature interstellar missiles, about the size of an arm, were fired through the electromagnetic cannon barrels in the same manner as the electromagnetic projectiles, hurtling toward us at high speed. During their flight, these miniature missiles even executed trajectory adjustments and speed maneuvers using their built-in propulsion. Thousands of battleships simultaneously activated laser cannons and electromagnetic cannons, with countless projectiles crisscrossing in this expanse of interstellar space. The lasers traveled at the speed of light, and by the time they were seen, they had already reached the ship's hull. Large interstellar missiles, equipped with fusion reactors and powered by highly efficient ion propulsion systems, could reach speeds exceeding 1,000 kilometers per second and could change direction, accelerate, or decelerate mid-flight, forcing the automatic defense systems to frantically fire projectiles and lasers. The massive hydrogen bombs are continuously detonated, each explosion releasing a brilliance akin to that of the sun, accompanied by extreme temperatures and radiation that annihilate everything within a radius of dozens of kilometers. Whether it be electromagnetic projectiles, spacecraft, interstellar missiles, landmines, or various forms of debris, all are vaporized under the glow of the hydrogen bomb explosion, turning into interstellar dust. The battle comes in a rush and quickly descends into chaos. Numerous combat spacecraft intertwine, exchanging fire. In less than an hour, hundreds of warships are directly destroyed. The wreckage and debris from the destroyed ships further exacerbate the chaos of the battlefield. At such high speeds, these fragments also possess tremendous lethality. One of the commanders even sees a smoking, damaged ship inadvertently collide with one of their small vessels, causing it to lose power. Fortunately, nearby warships provide rescue, barely allowing it to retreat from the battlefield. The interstellar space is in disarray. However, the commander's focus sharpens. As one of the most outstanding fleet commanders, he possesses the ability to discern critical information amidst the chaotic changes in the situation. Behind him, numerous staff members nervously review battlefield reports, whispering amongst themselves. The commander, initially tense, suddenly relaxes. A smile reappears on his face. "We are going to win," he states. "And it will be an easy victory." The staff exchange glances, somewhat puzzled. At this moment, the battlefield situation is chaotic. They can barely perceive their significant advantage. But to say the victory will be easy seems far-fetched. The commander smiles and asserts, "In no more than 5 hours, the battle will be over. We will annihilate the enemy's ambush fleet. Not a single enemy ship will escape." The staff are skeptical. Yet, after another hour, the situation becomes increasingly clear. At this point, they finally realize the truth. The enemy ambush fleet has indeed been routed. Chapter 68. Complete victory. Even the commander must admit that this fleet of human civilization possesses considerable prowess. They seem to have no concept of fear, completely unaware of apprehension, only focused on executing their missions. For instance, in a certain localized battlefield, 6 enemy warships are surrounded by their forces. Without rescue, they would surely be annihilated. At that time, 3 other warships have the capability to provide assistance. However, to rescue them, these 3 must charge into the encirclement, which means they would undoubtedly face destruction without hesitation from the enemies. Even the most loyal and fearless soldiers of the commander's civilization would hesitate in such a situation. Sacrificing 3 warships to save 6 is strategically sound, but ships are operated by people who can be completely unafraid of death and willingly sacrifice themselves to save their comrades. Yet, the warships of this human civilization did just that. They not only acted without hesitation, but did so resolutely. Almost as soon as the situation developed into this state, they charged forward without hesitation, sacrificing themselves to save their comrades. This fighting spirit earned the respect of the commander. However, unfortunately, in space warfare, mere spirit is of no use. Within just a few hours of battle, the commander identified several fatal flaws in the enemy fleet. First, their response was sluggish. They should not have suffered such a severe defeat. The slow reactions caused many aircraft to be delayed and subsequently lost. Second, their tactics were rigid. The fleet of the human civilization employed a very inflexible approach. They would react in a fixed manner when faced with certain situations, showing little adaptability. Upon realizing this, the fleet of the opposing civilization quickly developed targeted tactics, even actively creating certain scenarios and setting traps to lure the human fleet into making those predictable responses, thereby seizing the opportunity to annihilate the enemy and achieve significant victories. Third, there was a lack of overall coordination and a poor sense of the big picture. The commander noticed that while the human fleet coordinated well on a small scale, they lacked a unified combat will throughout the entire operation. This led to local advantages but resulted in an overall chaotic situation, akin to a headless fly. Fourth, there was a substantial technological gap. Compared to the human fleet's warships, the technological and combat power advantages of their own ships were immense. For instance, only the largest ship in the enemy fleet was equipped with an automated defense system capable of actively defending against electromagnetic projectiles, while the other medium and small vessels lacked even a basic automated defense system and could only endure direct hits. The commander understood that this was due to the human civilization's insufficient production capabilities, which hindered the mass production of components for automated defense systems and limited their ability to reduce energy consumption. This was a tangible hardware gap that could not be compensated for. In addition to these flaws, there were others. Because of this, the commander was able to make a final judgment even amidst the chaos. He was confident that they would win, and it would be a significant victory. The eventual outcome unfolded just as he had anticipated. Even though the human fleet had a full 1,000 ships, along with numerous interstellar mines to assist, and launched a surprise attack that caught them off guard, their own fleet only had 3,000 ships, with an additional 1,000 engineering vessels needing protection. Yet, the ultimate victory still belonged to the 7th Fleet, and the final result was the complete annihilation of the human fleet. Indeed, it was a total annihilation. Not a single ship escaped. However, it was rather strange that this human civilization seemed to have a custom of self-destruction. Once the ships of the human fleet, since they had lost combat capability, they would immediately detonate hydrogen bombs, vaporizing themselves. Some severely damaged vessels that could not self-destruct would be destroyed by their allies using interstellar missiles. Thus, although they had completely annihilated the enemy fleet, it was surprisingly the case that not a single prisoner was taken. However, this is a minor detail, as long as we achieve victory in the end. There is no need to dwell on the specifics. At this moment, the command room was filled with excitement and a joyful atmosphere. One officer was so thrilled that his face turned blue. 10,000 warships ambushing 3,000, waiting for them to tire out, and we annihilated them. Even with our technological advantage, this victory can be considered monumental. We only lost about 100 warships while destroying 10,000 of the enemies. That is a casualty ratio of 1-to-1. And this was under extremely unfavorable conditions. Ioun, make sure to save the war records. Once we return to civilization, I can brag about this for at least 100 years. Haha, this human civilization must have spent a long time and wasted countless resources planning this surprise attack. And now they haven't gained anything at all. Such a significant defeat. I can only imagine the immense pressure on the officials who pushed this plan forward. This human civilization must be in chaos now. Such a massive defeat could even lead to a leader being ousted in our civilization. 10,000 warships. According to our scans, this human civilization only has about 20,000 warships left in their solar system. They had a total of only 30,000. They've just lost a third of their combat power. Now this human civilization must understand our strength. A secondary intermediate civilization wanting to confront our advanced civilization? What a dream. All right. Mo Zhu smiled and halted the chatter among his subordinates. After this battle, the human civilization must have recognized the vast disparity in strength between us. Now, it will be much easier to proceed with cooperation. First, let's tally the losses, repair the ships, and clean up the battlefield. Mo Zhu had already made up his mind. According to the universal principles of communication among civilizations in the universe, after suffering a surprise attack, we have a significant moral advantage. It is entirely reasonable for us to retaliate. Once we reach the solar system, we will punish this human civilization, destroy a few of their bases, attack their capital, and force them to surrender the war criminals for severe punishment. After that, this human civilization will undoubtedly become as docile as a white beast, allowing us to manipulate them as we wish. The white beast is a creature known for its docility and timidity in our civilization. A message was once again sent from the Glory ship, traveling at the speed of light toward the nearby star system. Humans, is this how you treat distant guests? We come with sincerity and a desire for peace, yet you set up heavy defenses and brazenly launch a surprise attack? Your despicable actions seriously violate the principles of peace and justice, severely harming our interests. Based on this, we request the dispatch of an investigative team to your civilization to conduct an independent investigation into this surprise attack and to impose severe penalties on the war criminals. Additionally, due to the losses you have caused us, we demand that, beyond the previously agreed cooperation agreement, you must additionally compensate us with 30,000 tons of high-quality nickel compounds and 60,000 tons of nitrogen compounds. As specified in Article 6 of Section 7 of our cooperation agreement, our side requests to directly dispatch military observers to your fleet for on-site supervision during the cooperation process, exercising rights that include but are not limited to the following. Firstly, in the conclusion of the statement, there was a reminder of a corresponding threat, claiming that if the human civilization side refuses to accept these conditions, a comprehensive strike against human civilization would be initiated. It is believed that after demonstrating an overwhelming strength with a casualty ratio of 1-to-100, as long as there is still reason, the human civilization side will know what to do. At the Jupiter base, upon viewing the statement from the other civilization, Chinyu couldn't help but sneer. The combat capabilities displayed during the previous surprise attack indeed startled him, but they were still within an acceptable range. Moreover, the statement released by the other civilization and the demands made were all anticipated by Chinyu. Following the pre-established plan, he mockingly issued a response filled with humble wording and a tone of pleading. Esteemed leader of the other civilization, I hereby assure you on behalf of human civilization that peaceful coexistence is the common aspiration of all our members. Military confrontation is detrimental to cooperation and the development of civilizations. We strongly condemn the actions of a small group of military adventurers who, for their own interests, jeopardize the excellent cooperation between our civilizations. I have ascertained that the previous surprise attack was a misunderstanding. The planner of the operation was our military council chairman, and I have apprehended him and all his accomplices, totaling 635 war criminals, who can be handed over to you at any time. We are willing to assume full compensation responsibility for the losses caused to your civilization by this conspiracy. If necessary, I can represent all of human civilization at the memorial service for your fallen to express our apologies with the highest courtesy of our civilization. We fully accept the compensation requirements you mentioned regarding nickel compounds, nitrogen oxides, and other materials, without any objections. At this point, Chen Yu maintained the most humble tone and expressed the greatest sincerity. After all, he had offered up a scapegoat, including high-ranking officials, over 1,000 individuals. As a leader of civilization, he was willing to humble himself and go to them to apologize, and he accepted all their compensation demands. Was that not sincere enough? Was that not humble enough? Of course, all of this was just Chen Yu's fabrication. The notions of a civilization leader, the military council chairman, and so forth were merely illusions. At this moment, the entire human civilization, from top to bottom, had only Chen Yu as its representative, and he did not even have a physical entity. Following this information, Chen Yu shifted his tone. However, we cannot comply with your request to send an independent investigation team to our civilization. I assure you that we have already conducted comprehensive, detailed investigations that guarantee authenticity. All those responsible for this military adventure have been apprehended without exception. There is no need for your side to send an investigation team. The fleet maintains a certain degree of independence. Given our civilizational structure, if your side were to hastily send military observers and gain some authority, it could easily lead to chaos and significant turmoil within our civilization, which would be detrimental to our future cooperation. In light of these realities, I kindly urge you to reconsider this decision. While Chen Yueshu rambled on, the overall message was clear. We can acknowledge defeat and accept compensation, but we will not agree to any direct intervention in our internal affairs or attempts to control our civilization from within. This information was swiftly transmitted to the fleet of another civilization, reaching the front of their leader, Emojua. The senior officers and staff of the fleet exchanged glances at this response and smirked. They realized that this individual, Chu Tianyang, was merely a scapegoat. Emojua quickly concluded that this raid was not merely a reckless military adventure conducted by a small group of extremists, as claimed by the leader of the human civilization, but rather a test. If successful, they would gain an advantage in negotiations. If it failed, a scapegoat would be offered to placate their anger. One deputy commander nodded in agreement, noting that the human civilization was somewhat naive. Since the test had failed, they must face the consequences. They thought they could simply offer a few scapegoats and maintain their civilization's independence, which was impossible. If a failed war could be brushed aside by merely presenting a scapegoat, the cost would be far too low. The bottom line for us is to send investigation teams into their civilization to control their political sphere under the guise of investigating war criminals, and to send military observers into their fleet to control their military sphere through oversight. There can be no retreat on this matter. Continuing negotiations may involve the threat of force. Once both their military and political spheres are under our control, this human civilization would be at our mercy. However, what Emojua did not expect was that, under these circumstances, the human civilization would firmly express their opposition to our demands and refuse to accept these conditions. They were certainly humble in their wording, willing to increase compensation tenfold and even hinting at further negotiations, but they would not concede on their civilization's independence. Emojua sighed. The leader of this human civilization had, for his own interests, put the entire civilization at risk. Once their independence was lost, he would be the one most affected, potentially branded a war criminal and subject to judgment. This was highly probable. Emojua was already certain that the previous raid could not have occurred without the leader's approval, meaning he was the true instigator, for both punitive and personal reasons. Emojua had no intention of letting him go and felt compelled to execute him cruelly to relieve this grievance. It was clear that the leader had sensed this situation, which was why he staunchly refused to accept the presence of our investigation teams and military personnel. Chapter 70. Punishment. Maintaining civilizational independence could allow the leader of the human civilization to survive. The loss of civilizational independence will inevitably lead to the demise of its leaders. However, maintaining such independence carries the immense risk of retaliation from one's own forces. Even if independence is somehow preserved, how many benefits will be sacrificed in other aspects? All these maneuvers are merely to save one's own life and position. This is not merely selfishness, but a form of taking the entire civilization down as collateral. How unfortunate for this civilization to have such a leader. Emoju silently felt pity for his opponents. Even without our civilization, you wouldn't get far in this universe. Better to perish early and be reborn. Report to the commander. Here are the recent observations of the two main planets of the civilization. Emoju took the report and noted that the observations indicated unrest on both planets recently. The surfaces and space environments of these planets were frequently emitting flashes of light, which seemed to be caused by some sort of explosion. However, it was clearly not a war, as the scale was too small. It resembled more of a disturbance. Emoju smiled lightly. It seems the leader of this civilization does not have a secure grip on power. He must be under immense pressure at this moment. Since that's the case, let's add fuel to the fire. Order. Do not linger outside the star system. Directly invade Jupiter and destroy one of their industrial planets. Yes, this is both a punitive action and a show of force. I believe this punishment and display of strength will shock the entire civilization. At that point, subsequent negotiations will be much easier. The fleet slightly adjusted its course and, after a prolonged deceleration, continued at a high speed towards Jupiter with great momentum. At the Jupiter base, upon observing the change in course of the opposing fleet towards the Jupiter system, Yu felt a slight sense of relief. He remotely commanded several satellites in space to self-destruct, creating a spectacle resembling a disturbance, before checking his preparations again. All my efforts were not in vain. I finally lured you here. Now that you are here, there is no way you can leave. Indeed, Yu had exerted immense effort, through ambushes, performances, negotiations, and simulating disturbances, all with one goal: to draw the opposing fleet into the Jupiter system. The intention was to create an illusion of internal conflict, where the leader of the civilization, driven by selfishness, refuses to compromise. As soon as they make another punitive and demonstrative action, the entire civilization will collapse and succumb entirely to the overwhelming force of our civilization, falling under its control. Moreover, our civilization has ample reasons and internal motivation to carry out this punishment. After all, we were just ambushed. Although we achieved a 1-to-1 casualty ratio, we still lost over 100 ships and many lives. Now, since that civilization refuses to yield, it provides us with the perfect excuse to teach them a harsh lesson. If that civilization were to obediently submit, it would be frustrating not to punish them for the sake of future cooperation. Now, with reasons from both sides in place, what are we waiting for to punish them in the Jupiter system? At this moment, Yu's plan has finally succeeded. However, even so, Yu did not dare to relax for a moment. The previous ambush, although part of the subsequent plan, revealed the astonishing combat power of the Mozodi civilization. Even the smallest ships were equipped with automatic defense systems, and their armor quality was significantly superior, with better mobility and firepower, truly overwhelming. If I were an ordinary, typical social intelligence civilization, this Mozodi civilization could completely wipe me out with just this fleet. The technological gap is truly despairing. Fortunately, I am not an ordinary civilization. Yu thought silently, nervously making the final battle preparations. At this moment, the Mozodi fleet was less than 100 million kilometers from the Jupiter system. It wouldn't be long before they truly arrived. In communications, the tone of the Mozodi civilization became increasingly aggressive. Yu's responses were filled with pleading and panic. To more realistically simulate the state of a civilization leader being cornered, Yu even made promises that could be seen as treasonous, offering up to 200 million people as slaves to the Mozodi civilization, almost begging for mercy on his knees. From any perspective, this was a desperate plea for survival. Meanwhile, various explosions and chaos were becoming increasingly frequent within the Jupiter system. The entire civilization seemed to be plunged into complete disorder. Under these circumstances, the Mozodi civilization's fleet of 500 ships left 1,000 engineering vessels near Neptune, with 500 warships providing escort, finally arriving in the Jupiter system. Before the Mozodi civilization's arrival, Yu hurriedly gathered about 10,000 warships to meet them. These warships were poorly organized and scattered, clearly lacking fighting spirit. Emoju shook his head and laughed. This leader of the human civilization seems to have been driven to a dead end, ready to fight to the death. After preparing and plotting for so long, even with the advantage of time and place, our 10,000 warships were easily annihilated. Now, with over 10,000 warships here lacking fighting spirit and the civilization in chaos, how much threat could they pose to us? Well, destroying an industrial planet serves as a demonstration, and annihilating their fleet is also a demonstration. It's all the same. This civilization only has about 30,000 warships, right? After losing 10,000, and accounting for those stationed at another planet and the ones at home, these over 10,000 warships must be their last military strength that can be mobilized. Perfect. Eliminating their fleet means we won't even need to send military observers. Let's take them down. Emoju finally issued the order. According to the plan, battle formation, attack. One side was filled with fighting spirit, while the other was in a state of panic and chaos. In such circumstances, war broke out once again. Was it finally about to begin? At this moment, Yu felt invigorated. Having previously given them a grand gift, now, it was time to show them my true combat capabilities. Chapter 71. Extraordinary performance from the moment he discovered this distant civilization, through the initial exchanges to the later planning, negotiations, and conspiracies. Yu had spent over a decade carefully strategizing. He finally achieved his strategic goal of luring the enemy's main forces to the battlefield he had predetermined. Now, he could finally engage in a thrilling battle and fully demonstrate his war potential. the moment the Mozodi civilization launched its attack. As the overwhelming electromagnetic projectiles came hurtling towards them, under Chun Yu's command, over 12,000 ships, including 300 Nebula-class warships and 3 Comet-class warships, along with a majority of smaller Stardust-class ships, began their counterattack. The long-prepared electromagnetic cannons fired simultaneously, unleashing a torrent of projectiles towards the Mozodi fleet, which was tens of thousands of kilometers away. At the same time, a large number of expendable military satellites were deployed to assist in gathering battlefield data alongside the fleet's ships. Using this battlefield intelligence, Chun Yu began directing the fleet's ships to evade, charge forward, or simply call for reinforcements. Utilizing the might of the Comet-class warships to intercept the incoming electromagnetic projectiles and interstellar missiles. In the vast expanse beside Jupiter, fierce combat erupted between the two fleets. Over 10,000 warships transformed this region of space into a sea of blood and fire. Large, medium, small, micro, and specially designed interstellar missiles flew chaotically, propelled either by inertia or varying degrees of thrust. The brilliance of high-yield hydrogen bombs flickered like countless suns. Lasers crisscrossed the interstellar space, sweeping away everything tangible and intangible in their path, while electromagnetic bombs turned the communication environment into chaos. Debris from warships and interstellar missiles, along with stray projectiles, sped towards Jupiter, crashing into its atmosphere at incredible velocities. Such attacks, on a planetary scale, were unlikely to affect a colossal planet like Jupiter. Nevertheless, the scene was still magnificent. The high speed resulted in intense friction with Jupiter's atmosphere. Hence, whether it was warship debris, missile remnants, or stray electromagnetic projectiles, upon entering Jupiter's atmosphere, they transformed into meteors. Standing within Jupiter, one could see millions of meteors falling from the sky, resembling a rain of fire. At this moment, Chun Yu was fully focused, channeling most of his computational power into the battlefield. Both sides could no longer maintain formation. It was a complete melee, with each side intermingled. A skilled military commander could still influence the battlefield's direction amidst the chaos, but that was the extent of their control. The details on the battlefield were too chaotic for even the most outstanding commander to grasp everything. He could only make a rough judgment and then break down the strategic goals he wanted to achieve, assigning them to the commanders of the respective theaters. The commanders in those theaters would further break down the tasks and pass them down until they reached the individual ship commanders at the front lines, thus forming a complete battlefield command system. This command system clearly relied heavily on the quality of the grassroots commanders and soldiers. If one frontline ship failed to execute the tactical objectives as intended by the higher command, it was not a big deal. Even 10 failures were manageable. However, if 100 or 1,000 ships failed, it could significantly impact the overall situation. Fortunately, the 7th Fleet of the Morsodi civilization was among the few elite forces within the civilization, known for their well-trained personnel capable of fighting tough battles. At this moment, their formidable combat power was on full display on the battlefield. The ships on the side of human civilization were simply no match, and without requiring complex coordination from the soldiers, they could easily breach the enemy's lines as if they were cutting through vegetables. The situation looked very promising. Any commander would believe that victory was imminent, and it would be a resounding one. However, Emoju's brow furrowed once again. His exceptional qualities as a commander allowed him to notice some anomalies ahead of the other commanders. Although his side still held a significant advantage, the enemy fleet did not seem as weak as it had before. During the last surprise attack, their ships had reacted quite sluggishly, but now they appeared much more agile. Their coordination seemed less rigid, and at times they even executed tactical deception maneuvers. Emoju saw one of his ships fall into a trap due to carelessness and get taken down by dozens of enemy ships firing together. Moreover, he had a growing sense of the overall situation. He felt that within the enemy fleet, there was a collective operational will that permeated every frontline ship. It was as if even the commander of a small frontline ship could clearly perceive the overall battlefield situation and fully understand the intentions of the overall commander. Most importantly, they seemed to possess enough tactical acumen to execute the overall commander's battle plan. But how was this possible? As one of the few excellent commanders within the civilization, under such chaotic battlefield conditions, he could at most barely focus his attention on a squadron of about 100 ships. How could he possibly have the energy to pay attention to the smaller teams below that? No amount of staff could change that. So, how did the enemy manage to operate as a cohesive unit from the overall level down to each individual ship? Was this just his illusion? Emoju thought to himself. Perhaps it was because the civilization was facing a life-and-death crisis, which led to extraordinary performance. Yes, it must be that. But what good does it do? Although the enemy fleet's combat power had significantly increased compared to the last surprise attack, their overall strength was still far inferior to his side. The technological gap was real and substantial. Excellent tactics could only help to a certain extent, but they could not bridge the divide. At this moment, Emoju had become more serious. To avoid further losses and to defeat the opponent at a lower cost, he finally issued the command. Teams 3 and 4 stabilize the battlefield situation. Teams 1 and 2 advance, targeting the opponent's industrial star number 5, stretching their defensive line and forcing them to spread out. Once the defensive line is stretched, the next steps will be easier. Yes, on the star battlefield, the commanders of the teams immediately implemented Emoju's combat will. But at that moment, another fleet from a human civilization unexpectedly took off from a planet and joined the battlefield, attempting to block the advance of teams 1 and 2. Emoju thought for a moment and suddenly realized something, his expression darkening as he couldn't help but curse. What a madman. Chapter 72, Oil-Adding Tactics. Originally, Emoju thought that the human civilization had no more fleets to mobilize. However, the appearance of this unexpected fleet made him realize something instantly. He had been deceived. He had fallen into the opponent's trap. Everything before, including the previous ambush, was likely a strategic deception by the enemy. They were not an internal chaos. Nor was the civilization's leader sacrificing the entire civilization for personal gain. They were clearly luring his fleet here. Otherwise, how could this hastily assembled fleet show such significantly stronger combat capabilities than in the previous ambush? How could a civilization that was supposedly out of resources bring forth another fleet? What a madman. A madman. Emoju cursed loudly. To use a third of an entire civilization's fleet as bait? Just to lure us to your headquarters for a decisive battle? Madman. Commander. This is a civilization of madmen. A secondary intermediate civilization can support a fleet of at most around 30,000 warships. Anything more is simply unsustainable. The 10,000 warships that participated in the previous ambush and were annihilated were precisely 1/3 of their combat power, right? A civilization sacrificing a third of its combat power like that, just for bait? This is clearly not something a normal civilization would do. In a normal civilization, anyone proposing such an idea would be executed on the spot. But this human civilization actually did it? Who would have thought? Emoju believed that not only he, but even commanders of third-level civilizations, who were revered like deities, would not have imagined this. The most critical question is, what is the significance of directly sacrificing a third of the civilization's combat power? Yes, we were indeed deceived into your headquarters for a decisive battle, but so what? You only have about 20,000 warships left. Can you still defeat us? Will you not be crushed by us? It makes no sense at all. This civilization must be completely dazed from top to bottom. Emoju couldn't help but have such doubts in his mind. I don't care what kind of conspiracy you have. I only know that the gap in technology cannot be bridged by tricks. No matter how many routes you take, I will only go one way, breaking through with strength. Let's fight. First, eliminate their fleet. Attack. Emoju issued the command fiercely once again. At this moment, the first and second teams responsible for advancing and pulling the enemy's defense line had already engaged in combat with the suddenly appeared fleet. The fleet was not large, consisting of about 2,000 warships, which coincidentally matched the number of warships previously destroyed by our side on the main battlefield. Yes, the progress of the battle was indeed rapid. In less than half a day since the two sides exchanged fire, over 2,000 warships from the human civilization fleet had already been destroyed. The first and second teams of the 7th Fleet of the Mozoti civilization had a total of about 500 warships, making it easy to take down this fleet. After several hours of fierce fighting, the newly emerged fleet was completely annihilated. Just as the first and second teams took a breath and were about to continue their advance to complete their original mission, another fleet suddenly charged out. This fleet had about 3,000 warships. Emoju was momentarily taken aback. What was going on? Why are they bringing out their warships one by one? Wouldn't it be better to bring them all out at once? This piecemeal approach, was it a strategy to wear down the enemy? The so-called piecemeal strategy is a battlefield taboo. Surely this human civilization understands that, right? The piecemeal strategy involves breaking an entire army into smaller units and engaging the enemy bit by bit. For example, if both sides have 10,000 troops and fully commit to a decisive battle, the odds of winning are equal. But if one commander refuses to engage in a decisive battle and instead splits their forces into 100 parts of 100 soldiers each, sending them to fight against the opposing 10,000, those 100 will clearly be easily eliminated. After losing those 100, they send another 100, and so on. This is the piecemeal strategy. Emoju murmured. Since they are coming to us, we have no reason not to take them down. Eliminate this fleet. After a hard-fought battle, the fleet consisting of 4,000 warships was again annihilated. However, before it was completely wiped out, another fleet of up to 6,000 warships joined the main battlefield several thousand kilometers away. At this moment, after a series of engagements, although the number of human civilization warships destroyed by our side had reached around 10,000, The total number of warships belonging to human civilization on the battlefield had increased significantly, reaching about 20,000. With 20,000 warships, the tactical situation was no longer rigid. Responses were quicker, and combat effectiveness had greatly improved, posing a certain threat to Emoju's fleet, albeit still not a significant one. With the situation developing to this point, Emoju had to take things more seriously. It was truly unexpected that this human civilization could possess 40,000 warships. This should be their limit. Attack fiercely, and let us see if they have any more fleets to reinforce. Intense fighting continued. A few hours later, a commander rushed in with a report. We have observed a large number of interstellar artillery platforms moving towards us. Additionally, the number of interstellar mines is rapidly increasing. Interstellar artillery platforms? Emoju looked at the data and saw that there were hundreds of thousands of interstellar artillery platforms moving towards the battlefield from various planets in the Jupiter system. These artillery platforms had extremely low mobility, singular attack methods, and weak defenses, making them no match for warships in one-on-one combat. However, they were simple to manufacture, could be produced in large quantities, and could operate unmanned, allowing them to potentially exert significant power if used effectively. Emoju's expression fluctuated. After a moment, he asked, "What is the situation with the interstellar mines?" The staff officer replied, "The automated defense system has been sweeping for mines, and so far, at least 3 billion interstellar mines have been cleared. However, it is estimated that there are still over 10 billion interstellar mines on the battlefield, and they are increasing at a rate of at least 50,000 per second. These interstellar mines are causing significant obstacles to our operations." Emoju was nearly infuriated. There are already 13 billion mines on the battlefield, and at least 50,000 more are being added every second. How can this human civilization have such industrial strength? This civilization had brought too many surprises so far, but the situation was still under control. He decided to mobilize another 400 warships from the reserve fleet. Emoju was determined to exert all his power. Chapter 73. Is there more? This human civilization was too strange. From the very beginning, they seemed dazed. Directly using a quarter of their military strength as bait to lure his side into a decisive battle at their headquarters, to later employing battlefield tactics considered taboo. And now the rapidly increasing number of interstellar mines all gave Emoju an ominous premonition. He had decided to go all out and finish this battle as quickly as possible, ideally delivering a thunderous blow to defeat the enemy in one fell swoop. The longer it dragged on, the more he worried that this seemingly weak human civilization might pull off some trick. The engineering fleet stationed in the rear now had only 100 warships for escort. However, Emoju was not particularly worried about that. Even engineering ships had a certain level of self-defense capability, and there were automated defense facilities in place. He was confident that as long as the opposing side did not send a fleet of over 10,000 warships, the chances of capturing them were slim. Besides, if they couldn't win, they could still retreat, as their technology was more advanced and their acceleration capability stronger. However, it seemed that this human civilization had no intention of targeting those engineering ships. After 3 days of maneuvering, the 400 fully loaded warships finally arrived on the battlefield and joined the formation. Their addition once again strengthened Emoju's forces. As of now, he had commanded the fleet to engage in fierce combat with the human civilization for a full 3 days. During this time, the Mozodi civilization's fleet had achieved significant victories. The 20,000 warships sent by the human civilization to the battlefield had now been destroyed by half, while his side had only lost about 200 warships. Overall, the exchange ratio between the two sides was roughly maintained at about 1:60. In other words, the side of human civilization has to lose as many as 60 warships to destroy one of their own. This ratio, compared to the initial surprise attack where it was 1:100, is certainly not comparable. But considering the inexplicable enhancement of the combat power of their fleet in this campaign, along with the participation of numerous interstellar mines and artillery, maintaining a loss ratio of about 1:60 is already enough to make Emoju proud. At this moment, from the original 3,000 warships, only 2,460 remain, most of which have sustained some damage, and the war materials have been largely consumed, making resources no longer abundant. On the hull of the Glory warship, lasers crisscrossed, continuously clearing away interstellar mines and missiles that attempted to approach. In just 1 minute, nearly 1,000 interstellar mines were eliminated. This situation has persisted from the beginning of the war until now. Up to this point, the Glory alone has destroyed nearly 5 million interstellar mines. However, more interstellar mines continue to swarm towards them like moths to a flame. After directing another wave of dense, incoming mines to be cleared, Emoju couldn't help but grumble. Is this human civilization really diverting all its industrial power to produce interstellar mines? As the war has progressed, they have cleared a total of over 20 billion interstellar mines, yet they are still being deployed. TSK. The clusters of interstellar mines are like a bunch of annoying mosquitoes. They don't cause much damage but constantly buzz around, making it impossible to drive them away, which is quite bothersome. Fortunately, the war is nearing its end. Mo Zhu let out a gentle sigh. These last 10,000 or so warships should be their final strength. The deputy commander and staff members shared the same sentiment. This interstellar war has indeed left them feeling a sense of annoyance, lacking the exhilaration of past battles. They just want it to end quickly. They have no desire to fight any longer. This human civilization is truly formidable. A high-ranking fleet officer remarked. For an ordinary secondary intermediate civilization, having 20,000 warships would be remarkable. Yet they have. Well, haven't we already destroyed nearly 30,000 warships? And now there are still 10,000 left, totaling a whopping 40,000. TSK, that's truly impressive. Once we gain control of their civilization, we must investigate how they managed to produce so many warships. Building a warship is not just a matter of construction, though that alone is already quite challenging. The number of upstream factories and industrial workers needed to produce a single warship is substantial, not to mention the ongoing maintenance and repairs required after construction. Most importantly, someone must operate the warships. A small warship requires around 80 trained elite soldiers to control it. For 40,000 warships, considering the larger ones, approximately 4 million elite soldiers would be needed in total, including logistics, operational resources, repairs, and supplies. About 10 million people would be necessary. The entire industrial chain would require around 100 million people, all of whom must be professionals with higher education. 100 million people contribute no value to the internal production of civilization, but instead rely on the rest to support them. They are all highly qualified talents, and their treatment cannot be low. Roughly estimated, a civilization with a population of about 10 billion would be required to support this 100 million people. This is still a completely militaristic civilization, where all the strength of the entire civilization is directed towards enhancing armaments and developing military capabilities to achieve such a situation. If the civilization also develops more cultural and entertainment aspects, even a civilization of 10 billion would struggle to support so many military personnel. This is precisely why Mejua is so curious about this human civilization. If they push harder and launch another wave of offensives, they could finish clearing the last 10,000 warships sooner. Mejua made a firm decision. But at that moment, a staff officer rushed into the meeting room. His face was pale, looking both angry and somewhat fearful. Commander, our satellite reconnaissance has detected about 10,000 warships taking off from the surface of Planet 6, currently maneuvering towards the battlefield, and they will join the battle in about a day. Wow. A senior fleet officer was so shocked that he stood up. More warships? 10,000. This is impossible. How could they possibly have 50,000 warships? Our civilization has only 50,000 warships in total. We are a secondary advanced civilization. We have mastered helium, 3 fusion technology, and more efficient ion propulsion technology, making us a high-productivity secondary advanced civilization. Supporting 50,000 warships is already quite difficult for us. And this human civilization is only a secondary intermediate civilization. How could they possibly have 50,000 warships? Moreover, the staff officer continued with a grim face. Intelligence shows that the rate at which the human civilization is deploying interstellar mines has increased again, from an average of 50,000 per second to 660,000. Chapter 74. The last wave this time. Mejua was genuinely shocked. All intelligence suggests that the war potential of this human civilization seems to have not yet been fully tapped. After such a long time, this human civilization is still dispatching fleets to battle, and even the rate of interstellar mine deployment has increased again. Calculating the mass of an interstellar mine at 0.5 kilograms, deploying 660,000 per second amounts to a staggering 33 tons per second, which is nearly 300,000 tons per day. If the human civilization is deploying mines at this rate, they must have several production lines. And combined with upstream and downstream factories, it would require several million people to produce them, right? Additionally, considering the seemingly endless interstellar artillery platforms that continue to join the battlefield regardless of how many are destroyed, with the production capacity of this secondary intermediate civilization, it would take at least over 10 million people to complete the production, right? What kind of civilization can allocate over 10 million people just for producing such things? Mejua, have been fighting for so long and have never seen such an extravagant civilization. This is insane. A senior fleet officer couldn't help but curse. If you have so many warships, why didn't you bring them out at the beginning? 50,000 warships engaging against our 3,000 is not without a chance of fighting back. This piecemeal strategy of harassment is simply nonsensical. Calm down. A roar from Mo Zhu suppressed the atmosphere in the conference room. He slowly said, when a civilization faces dire straits, it can often unleash unexpectedly powerful forces. I acknowledge that the performance of this human civilization has exceeded our expectations, but it is still within the normal range. However, no matter how united they are or how much potential they unleash, there are limits. It is impossible for them to sustain an endless supply. I judge that this last 10,000 warships must be their final stock. Right now, we still have over 2,000 warships, and our strength remains superior. Do not panic. Do not fear. Crush them, destroy them. I want to see what other tricks this human civilization can come up with. Commander, our warriors have been fighting for days without comprehensive resupply and repair, and currently, many warships are damaged. Our combat materials, such as electromagnetic shells, interstellar missiles, and fusion fuel, are somewhat lacking. We must rally our spirits for this final battle. Emoju's tone suddenly became stern, showcasing the authority and dominance of a fleet commander. Once we have annihilated the human civilization's fleet, we will carry out a full resupply and repair. Fast fighters. We already have credible intelligence indicating that this is the last wave of warships. Once we finish this wave, the human civilization will be at its end. Yes, the latest orders are to be issued immediately. The warriors on the front lines, who have begun to feel fatigued and annoyed, once again rallied their fighting spirit. In a dense barrage of electromagnetic shells, a Stardust-class warship manufactured by Chunyu was hit by thousands of projectiles in an instant. Although the nearby Comet-class flagship did its utmost to intercept, it had too many warships to cover and could not allocate enough protective force. The electromagnetic shells from the Mozodi civilization had higher quality, faster speeds, and more powerful kinetic energy. Under the bombardment of these thousands of shells, even the most advanced armor developed by Chunyu could not withstand the impact. In the next moment, the fusion reactor was affected, and it directly shut down. The fusion reactor does not go into uncontrolled nuclear explosion after being attacked, because maintaining nuclear fusion requires a very complex environment. Once this environment is lost, it will simply shut down. It instantly lost its energy source. The electromagnetic cannon could no longer fire, and the ion thruster could not propel it forward or backward. But it was fine. Inside each warship, Chunyu had placed a hydrogen bomb with a yield equivalent to 1 million tons. At this moment, the hydrogen bomb was detonated. Before the explosion, the nearby friendly warships instinctively maneuvered away. The next moment, a massive fireball along with endless light and heat erupted. The self-detonation that had been criticized countless times by the Mozodi civilization's fleet reappeared. The 6th ship of the 3rd Squadron of the 2nd Division of the 7th Fleet, responsible for an electromagnetic cannon attack, could not help but complain. Another self-detonation, yet again. His comrade muttered, "Aren't these warriors of human civilization afraid of death? They self-destruct so decisively, without a hint of hesitation." Luckily, we dodged in time. When Yuanlan joked amidst the hardship, "Another warship is coming from that side. Stop dawdling and take it out quickly. The sooner we finish, the sooner we can wrap up. Who knows when this will end? Alert! Alert! A large number of interstellar mines are approaching. Mine clearance team, be on alert." How annoying. More interstellar mines. Do they cost nothing? Just tossing them onto the battlefield like this? I'm so exhausted. I haven't rested for 2 days. Didn't you hear what Lord Majwa said? This is the last wave. Hang in there. Once it's over, we can rest. All right. Boom. Another small warship of human civilization was destroyed. Before it was completely obliterated, it inevitably self-destructed once again. Nice. That's the 7th one, right? Just one more, and then we can rest. Hurry up. We have half an hour until the shift change. Okay. Target selected. Coordinates X 3216, Y 5517, Z 5014, fire. On board the Glory. In the command room, the report came in. "Commander, our fleet is fighting valiantly. So far, the enemy's warship count has been reduced to around 10,000, and they have been divided into 7 segments, which we are currently annihilating one by one. Divided into 7 segments, unable to connect or coordinate with each other, no support or cover. Human civilization is doomed. What we need to do next is simple. Eliminate them one by one." Majwa let out a long breath, feeling a sense of relief. Finally, it's about to end. Just as he was about to give the order to swiftly eliminate the remaining enemies, a sudden roar broke out in the conference room. Majwa looked up to see a deputy captain leaning heavily on the table, his 3 eyes wide open, seemingly about to pop out, clearly furious. "Commander, we received a report from the reconnaissance ship. From the enemy's 5th planet, another 10,000 warships have set sail and are heading to the battlefield. Expected to join the fight in a day. Damn, how can there be more?" Majwa felt like he was going insane. Chapter 75. The strongest combat power 60,000. A full 60,000. This civilization, merely at the intermediate 2nd level, possesses 60,000 warships. That's even more than our own civilization. How can they afford to train so many skilled warriors? Majwa could clearly perceive that from the beginning of this battle until now. The tactical proficiency and combat level of this human civilization's warships have remained stable, consistently, at a high standard without any decline. This clearly indicated that the warriors operating the warships at this moment are not hastily assembled reserves, but formally trained soldiers who have completed their training and meet the standards. 60,000 warships and over 5 million standard warriors. How is that even possible? Majwa felt like he was going crazy. He even began to suspect that this human civilization might have hidden potential yet to be unleashed. Because they have been fighting until now. Even the reserves haven't been deployed. Commander, the soldiers are mustering their last bit of fighting spirit in battle, and now another batch of reinforcements has arrived. What should we do? On paper, we still have an absolute advantage. But in Emoj was hard. He knew that they had almost reached a dead end. With a force of 3,000 warships, they had destroyed as many as 40,000 enemy ships. Even with technological disparities, this was no simple task. What to do? Emojwa barely steadied his mind and thought rapidly. He was well aware that he was the highest commander of this fleet, and he had to remain calm. Once he lost his composure, the entire fleet would be doomed. After a moment, he made a decision. Tell the soldiers to hold steady. This must be the last reinforcements for this human civilization, the very last. There won't be any more after this. It's impossible. Emojwa roared. It must be the last one. At this moment, even he had some doubts about his own judgment. But he could only do this, only say this. Yes. The last one. The staff scrambled to organize a new round of tactics. And the atmosphere in the control room of the Glory was gloomy and oppressive. At this moment, at Base 2 on Jupiter, inside a ground-based spaceship factory. The completed spaceships were neatly parked under camouflage canopies, arranged in rows and columns, occupying a large area of enemy territory. This is the storage base for the spaceship numbered 13. In the previous decades of combat readiness, Chinyu had built a total of 30 such spaceship bases. Each base housed a total of 5,000 completed warships. Among them, there were 4 500 Stardust-class warships, 498 Nebula-class warships, and 2 Comet-class warships, the largest. Currently, bases 11 and 12 had just cleared their inventory. A total of 10,000 warships stored there had just set sail for the battlefield. Chinyu still had 18 bases left, with a total of 90,000 warships stored. The combat power of this so-called Mozodi civilization is indeed formidable. Chinyu thought resentfully. Even if I lure them to my main base, where I can directly control the ships conveniently, and the tactical coordination is maximized, the damage ratio can barely reach 60-1, and it can't be reduced any further. This was the reason why Chinyu went to great lengths to lure the Mozodi civilization fleet to his main base. In other locations, due to the long distance and significant communication delays, Chinyu couldn't directly control the ships and could only let the intelligent program command the fleet in battle. Of course, the intelligent program could not compare to Chinyu, a being with human intelligence. They could not handle overly complex battlefield environments or make complicated decisions. In terms of combat quality, this resulted in slow reactions, rigidity, and significantly reduced combat effectiveness. Only at the main base could Chinyu leverage his advantages and maximize combat power. Also, the production speed of interstellar mines and interstellar artillery is still too slow. The factory has been operating at full capacity, producing only 50,000 units per second on average, while the interstellar turrets can only manufacture 16 units. Ultimately, it boils down to insufficient computational power. Chinyu sighed, feeling somewhat frustrated as he reflected on the current battlefield situation. He had already detected the fatal weakness of the Mozodi civilization's fleet. Their individual warships are indeed powerful, far exceeding his own capabilities. However, if he could command hundreds of thousands of warships to swarm them, sheer numbers would overwhelm them. But there is nothing he can do. His computational capacity on the battlefield is limited to controlling only 20,000 warships. Any more than that, and he wouldn't be able to manage. Thus, what should have been a siege has turned into a rather frustrating attrition tactic for Chinyu. He can only wait for the previous batch of warships to be destroyed before his computational power is freed up to command new ships to join the battle. At the same time, the total number of warships participating in this war can only be maintained at around 20,000. The silicon chip technology has already reached its limits. With the current technology, it's impossible to further enhance computational power. Chinyu thought to himself, the Mozodi civilization is clearly more advanced than I am. I wonder what kind of chip technology they use. It should be quantum computing, right? Given my current technological accumulation, quantum computing is the most likely breakthrough direction. Once we defeat them and capture them, I'll be able to study their technology in depth and draw some lessons. The Mozodi civilization's warships should also be nearing their limits, right? They haven't received supplies for such a long time. With these thoughts, Chinyu steeled himself again and continued to command the massive fleet in battle against the Mozodi civilization fleet. At this moment, aboard the Glory battleship in the main control room, Lord Majwa, our fleet has recently sustained damage in battle, and shortages of ammunition and energy have become apparent. My lord, Should we consider retreating? Perhaps to that gas giant to regroup before continuing the fight? Lord Majwa stared intently at the 3D battlefield map, his expression grave. After a moment of silence, he replied softly, "Do you think we can escape the battlefield without annihilating these warships?" His subordinate fell silent. Majwa exhaled lightly. Fortunately, this battle is nearing its end. After a grueling fight, the additional 10,000 warships from human civilization had nearly been wiped out. At this moment, the number of human civilization warships still alive on the battlefield had dropped to around 10,000. The Mozodi civilization is indeed formidable. Chun Yu was somewhat speechless. 10,000 warships have been dealt with. Let us send another 10,000. With Chun Yu's order, the camouflage shelters at bases 13 and 14 were removed, and another 10,000 warships took to the skies, heading toward the battlefield. Chapter 76, Surrender and Survival. Majwa had made up his mind. After annihilating this fleet from human civilization, even if the enemy's main base is within sight, like a crab stripped of all its shells, waiting for him to taste, he would not accept this civilization. He must first find a planet to regroup. Only after restoring his strongest combat capabilities would he consider accepting this civilization. There's no way out. I'm truly terrified by this strange civilization. If they stir up more trouble, how can my exhausted fleet cope? Please don't let it happen again. O divine protector, just let there be no more disturbances. At this moment, Emoju couldn't help but start praying. Commander, the door to the conference room was suddenly pushed open. Emoju was startled and looked at the hurriedly entering officer with a glare that could almost devour. The officer was equally shocked and instinctively halted. What is the matter? Emoju gritted his teeth, seeming as if he would devour the officer if he uttered the words about new enemy reinforcements. The officer stammered. We have made significant progress in the third war zone and have managed to split off a fleet of the enemy. Emoju sighed in relief and waved his hand, indicating that he understood. However, his heart hadn't completely settled when another panicked voice reached his ears. Commander, the enemy has new reinforcements. Another 10,000 ships. What the hell? Emoju couldn't catch his breath, his vision darkened, and he fainted. Commander, Emoju, quickly call a doctor. The fleet of the civilization collapsed completely. The soldiers on the front lines, who had gathered their last bit of spirit, stamina, and fighting will, had just executed another encirclement tactic. But before they could catch their breath, they noticed their superior commanders starting to panic. At the same time, coordination between their forces and allied forces began to show frequent errors, as if they had lost unified command. Experienced soldiers immediately sensed that there was likely a problem with the core command of the fleet, losing the ability for unified coordination and command. Moreover, hadn't they nearly wiped out the enemy fleet? Logically, the enemy fleet should be getting smaller, so why did it seem to have increased? And the number of interstellar mines, interstellar artillery, armed satellites, spies, and communication satellites also seemed to be on the rise. What is going on? Why are there more and more as we fight? After a moment of confusion, a somewhat terrifying guess emerged in the soldiers' minds. Could it be that the enemy had reinforcements again? What the hell? More reinforcements? What is going on? This is never ending. The soldiers, who were already at their wits' end, completely broke down. At that moment, the command system of the entire fleet collapsed. From this moment on, there would no longer be unified higher-level orders, no more mutual coordination, no more tacit cooperation. Without a command system, each ship was left to fight on its own. Panic spread like a fog across the entire battlefield. Damn it, we are under attack. Quick, retaliate, retaliate. A ship from the civilization had its ion thrusters at full power, frantically fleeing. Thousands of kilometers away, dozens of warships from a certain civilization were relentlessly bombarding it. Despite the automated defense systems working at full capacity to intercept the attacks, a small portion of projectiles still managed to hit, creating sparks on its external armor. In a panic, the warship immediately launched a counterattack. The cannons pivoted, and electromagnetic projectiles fired at the target based on the ship's radar guidance. However, at that moment, a friendly ship inadvertently crossed the path of the electromagnetic cannon's fire. The powerful projectile struck it directly. The power of the electromagnetic projectile was significantly higher than that of the opposing civilization, causing substantial damage. This attack penetrated the armor of the friendly warship and even damaged its thrusters, causing its acceleration to suddenly slow down. Inside the warship, the soldiers were dumbfounded. How could this happen? Did we just accidentally harm our comrades? Could such a thing happen in our elite fleet, known for its rigorous training and advanced equipment? Everything was in chaos. The captain closed his eyes in despair. Let us escape, let us escape. The command structure has collapsed. We must flee as much as we can. Forgetting about rescuing our comrades, the warship accelerated again, fleeing the battlefield. In stark contrast to the chaos and panic of the fleet, Shin Yu felt invigorated. The changes on the battlefield had already been captured by spies and reconnaissance satellites he had positioned there, as well as the radar systems on the warships. After analysis by a specially trained battlefield analysis system, the results were clearly presented to Chun Yu. The enemy's command structure had completely collapsed, and they were fighting in disarray. Despite their apparent numerical superiority, they had fallen apart on their own. This is the limitation of sentient beings, whether human or alien. It's the same for all intelligent life. Since that's the case, I want to hold back. Want to escape from me? Dream on. Under Chun Yu's command, a total of 20,000 warships dispersed into smaller units, adopting the tactics previously employed by the enemy to encircle the disordered fleet. The disorganized warships of the enemy floundered around like headless flies. However, facing a fleet with unified command and no issues of coordination or cooperation, they had no chance of escaping. Moreover, under Chun Yu's orders, all warships, interstellar artillery, and even reconnaissance and military satellites began broadcasting the same signal simultaneously. The civilization treats captives well. Surrender, and you will not be harmed. The civilization treats captives well. Surrender, and you will not be harmed. At that moment, even the chaotic electromagnetic environment of the battlefield could not interfere with the transmission of this message. The enemy warships continued to collide chaotically, trying to escape. However, after Chun Yu mercilessly destroyed dozens of warships, the situation finally eased slightly. Moments later, a warship from the Mozodi civilization took the lead. We surrender. We surrender. Chapter 77. Fight to the death. At this moment, the remaining 2,000 warships of the Mozodi civilization had all been divided by Chun Yu's fleet. They scattered into 8 groups, unable to connect with each other, incapable of coordinating their efforts, and having consumed a large amount of combat supplies. Their command system had collapsed, leaving them with almost no capability to continue fighting. As long as Chun Yu was willing, he could achieve the complete annihilation of the Mozodi fleet at the cost of around 10,000 of his own warships. But he did not want to do that. The Mozodi civilization was the first civilization Chun Yu encountered after stepping into interstellar space. He had no knowledge of the rules governing interactions between civilizations within the galaxy and even the entire universe, what default terms needed to be observed, how to coexist, or the overall situation. He intended to clarify these matters through the Mozodi civilization. At this moment, most of the fighting had ceased. The majority of the Mozodi warships and his own were quietly hovering in space. Although they remained on guard against each other, they did not launch further attacks. Only a few Mozodi warships, seemingly driven to madness, were still attempting to break through the encirclement and attacking his fleet. Chun Yu showed no mercy to this portion of the enemy and directly ordered his fleet to concentrate fire and eliminate them. Under these circumstances, some Mozodi warships, panicked and filled with fear, chose to surrender. Immediately maneuver to the following position and tell us the environmental parameters required for your intelligent life to survive. Chun Yu promptly issued the order to that warship. Okay. The specific parameters for our intelligent life to survive are: first, air, 56 nitrogen, 19 oxygen, 6 sulfur dioxide. A massive cargo ship had already been mobilized to the battlefield in advance by Chun Yu. Its cargo hold had been completely cleared and equipped with a life support system. Based on the parameters obtained from the Mozodi fleet's warriors, Chun Yu quickly adjusted the internal environment of the cargo ship. That Mozodi warship obediently maneuvered to the designated location. Here, at least hundreds of his own warships were watching it closely, ready to destroy it at the slightest sign of trouble. The warship moved cautiously and, following Chun Yu's orders, docked with the cargo ship. All personnel on board the warship must transfer to the life support ship. Be careful not to make any confrontational or hostile actions. Any such actions will be deemed malicious and will result in immediate termination by us. Chun Yu issued a stern warning. Chun Yu made no attempt to hide any of this. Instead, he broadcasted everything openly, ensuring that all Mozodi warriors on the battlefield were aware of the specific process for their surrender. This was a complete disarmament. Once the combat personnel left the warship, they would be no more formidable than a tiger without claws and teeth. A tiger without claws and teeth can still crush many animals simply by relying on its weight. Once the combat personnel leave their battleship and enter the life support vessels provided by the opponent, they can no longer resist. Chun Yu only needs one command to control them: stop the gas supply to the vessel, which is effortless and incurs no cost. If you have to rely on me to provide the essential environment for survival, what can you use to resist me? This is clearly understood by the warriors of the Mozodi civilization. Once they enter the life support vessel, their fate is completely out of their control. This may be a difficult situation to accept. What if we lose all resistance and the enemy directly kills us? Making the choice to trust the enemy and take a gamble, or to fight to the death, is tough. However, Chun Yu is not worried at all. Whatever you choose, it doesn't matter to me. At this moment, the attention of all Mozodi civilization warriors on the battlefield, including the high-ranking officials aboard the Glory, is focused here. Humans, we have surrendered. We swear to the deity of Sirius that we will no longer launch any attacks against you and will obey your management. Please let us stay on our battleship. The communication system of that vessel transmitted the electromagnetic signal in a broadcast format. In the almost silent battlefield environment at that moment, this electromagnetic signal was transmitted unobstructed to every ship, heard by all warriors of the Mozodi civilization. At this moment, endless sorrow and solemnity surged in the hearts of the warriors. If we must leave our battleship and hand our fate over to the enemy, it would be better to fight to the death. If we cannot decide whether we live or die, at least we can decide whether we die fighting. Chun Yu keenly sensed the subtle change in emotions on the battlefield, realizing that the fighting spirit of the Mozodi civilization warriors was once again rising at this moment. Meanwhile, aboard the Glory, under the watchful eyes of the furious high-ranking officials, the unconscious Mo Zhu finally regained consciousness with the help of the doctors. He opened his somewhat vacant three eyes, struggled to sit up, disregarding his own condition, and immediately inquired, "What is the situation now?" "Commander, we have failed," a staff officer quickly reported with a tone of anger and despair. Mo Zhu abruptly stood up, pushing aside the doctor who tried to stop him, and tore off the treatment device fixed to his arm, throwing it away. He quickly approached the command platform. "Warriors, I am your commander, Mo Zhu. I am still alive. Our Mozodi civilization's 7th fleet has not been destroyed. Sound cannot be transmitted in space." Yet, Chen Yu seemed to perceive cheers coming from one Mozodi civilization battleship after another. At this moment, the originally restless and maneuvering ships came to a halt, subtly regrouping with the surrounding vessels, breaking away from their individual combat status. The life support spacecraft that had docked with the warship dispatched by Chun Yu had fallen completely silent, not following Chun Yu's orders to leave the warship, but seemingly waiting for the situation to develop further. Oh, interesting. Faced with the resurgence of the enemy's fighting spirit, Chun Yu showed no signs of panic and seemed more interested in watching the unfolding events, eagerly anticipating the next move from the Mozodi civilization fleet. "Human, I, as the commander of the 7th fleet of the Mozodi civilization, surrender to you. However, you must guarantee our corresponding rights and personal safety. Otherwise, we will fight until the last moment. You can certainly wipe us out, but you may not realize the consequences that would entail." The words of this Majwa slightly surprised Chun Yu, even earning him a bit of admiration. At this moment, Majwa did not let his emotions overtake him and claimed that they would fight to the last moment. Such sentiments, while passionate and tragic, would clearly be of no use. The fact that he could control his impulsive thoughts, recognize that there was no chance of winning, and understand the necessity of surrendering, while still trying to negotiate and threaten to maximize their own benefits, showed that this person was quite clear-headed. Currently, Chen Yu had completely surrounded the Mozodi civilization fleet, akin to having a fish caught on the cutting board. Originally, this fish had resigned to its fate and was not resisting much. Yet, with Majwa's simple statement, the warriors were once again ignited with fighting spirit. This was his bargaining chip for the subsequent negotiations. "You can certainly devour me. But do you believe I can give you a hard slap with my tail before you do? Rather than both sides suffering losses, why not make some concessions?" Chen Yu said with great interest. "Tell me, what would be the consequences of wiping you out?" Majwa perked up. As long as this human civilization was willing to talk, there was a possibility for further progress. Whatever he could negotiate would be much better than leaving the warship to enter the life support spacecraft offered by the enemy. You human civilization is a primitive civilization. You have not integrated into interstellar society and have no understanding of the true operational rules of the interstellar community. That is why your predecessor civilization was purged. After this statement, Chen Yu immediately became more serious. Purged? Are you referring to the explosion that destroyed the entire planet and annihilated human civilization? This Majwa clearly knew the truth behind that explosion. He even understood that the current Chun Yu was not from a first-generation civilization, but rather a second-generation civilization following the destruction of the first. Only civilizations that join the Star Alliance are considered legitimate and have the right to survive in the galaxy. Any civilization outside the Star Alliance, once discovered, will inevitably face purging. You may not yet know what the Star Alliance is. The Star Alliance is a civilization alliance formed millions of years ago by the 5 major 6th-level civilizations in the galaxy, the most powerful existence within the galaxy. No force can contend with the Star Alliance. We, the Mozodi civilization, a secondary advanced civilization, are members of the Star Alliance. We are vassals of a great tertiary civilization, the Southern Star Civilization. Chen Yu's mind raced with thoughts. A union of 5 6th-level civilizations? All civilizations that have not joined the Star Alliance will be purged if discovered, leading to their complete destruction? How imposing, how tyrannical. This Mozodi civilization is merely a secondary advanced civilization. Their technological strength may surpass mine. According to this logic, after years of hard work, I have only managed to reach a secondary intermediate civilization. The early human civilization, at best, was just a secondary primary civilization? At this moment, Shin Yu felt no admiration or fear towards the Star Alliance, but rather anger and hatred. If what Mo Zhu said is true, then the one behind the scenes who destroyed Earth and annihilated the entire civilization, leaving me homeless, is this Star Alliance. You destroyed my home, killed all my compatriots, my relatives, lovers, and friends, leaving me to live in this half-human, half-ghost state. Continuing, Shin Yu suppressed his anger and maintained a calm tone. Humanity, I admit. As a secondary intermediate civilization, you managed to achieve ultimate victory in our war, which is surprising and unbelievable. I acknowledge your strength. But our Mozodi civilization is merely a secondary advanced civilization. If you dare to annihilate us, the Southern Star civilization will surely notice the anomalies in the solar system and will send a fleet to investigate. You may be able to destroy me, but can you also eliminate the fleet of the Southern Star civilization? The gap between civilization levels is like a chasm. A true tertiary civilization can wipe out our Mozodi civilization with just one fleet. And at this moment, your enemy, me, is merely leading one of the 17 fleets within our civilization. Destroying us would sever your civilization's path to future survival. Mo Zhu's words were resolute. Shin Yu coldly replied, then, where is our way out? Joining the Star Alliance. Only by joining the Star Alliance can our civilization continue. I can guarantee that if you ensure the safety and rights of my warriors, I can request our civilization's leader to approach the Southern Star civilization on your behalf, securing a spot for you in the Star Alliance. This way, you will no longer have to worry about being purged. Humanity. Don't think that joining the Star Alliance is easy. The Alliance's external policy has always been to annihilate all non-member civilizations. Any discovery will lead to retaliation. Without our civilization's guarantee, and without our civilization's application, you cannot join the Star Alliance. Humanity, make your choice. Will you grant us the treatment we deserve and seek the long-term continuation of civilization, or will you risk everything in a desperate fight to annihilate us? Answer me. At that moment, Shin Yu realized that despite being the one in an absolutely advantageous position on the battlefield, the initiative in the negotiations had unknowingly shifted to Mo Zhu's hands. It seemed that he was the one in the weaker position. Shin Yu did not rush to turn the situation around, but continued to coldly ask, what is the reason for the establishment of the alliance? What restrictions do civilizations that join the alliance face? What obligations do they have? In this universe, low-level civilizations hold no significance for high-level civilizations. Civilizations that join the alliance must accept comprehensive supervision from higher civilizations, prohibiting any attempts to elevate their civilization level. If a low-level civilization is found attempting to study those forbidden theories in an effort to elevate their civilization level, they will be immediately expelled from the alliance and subsequently annihilated. The only way to elevate a civilization level is to accumulate enough contribution points to the alliance, which will be reviewed by the headquarters, after which the main civilization of that civilization will provide technological materials from a higher-level civilization. The obligation of member civilizations of the alliance is to accept assignments from higher civilizations to eliminate non-alliance civilizations that appear within their capabilities and defense zones. Humans, your civilization must also have think tanks. You can analyze the intelligence I provided, and I believe you can determine its truthfulness. Shin Yu's spirit suddenly shook. In this universe, low-level civilizations hold no significance for high-level civilizations. So that is how it is. In an instant, Shin Yu felt the fog that enveloped his vision dissipate. He could immediately confirm with absolute certainty that everything the speaker said was true, absolutely true. Just this one sentence allowed Shin Yu to completely understand the interaction patterns among civilizations within the current universe, at least within the galaxy. From this sentence, so many conclusions could be drawn. According to the speaker, 6th-level civilizations are the most technologically advanced and powerful civilizations within the galaxy. Therefore, apart from these 5 6th-level civilizations, all other civilizations in the galaxy are of no significance to them. In other words, all other civilizations do not provide any benefits or advantages to these 5 6th-level civilizations. Conversely, these civilizations have the potential to continue developing and eventually become 6th-level civilizations. This is a tangible disadvantage. After all, resources within a galaxy are limited. Originally, with only our 5 6th-level civilizations, all resources were allocated among us. If a new 6th-level civilization emerges, as long as we do not risk mutual destruction by starting a war, we will inevitably have to concede some benefits to this newly emerged 6th-level civilization. Although the galaxy is vast and spacious, even if there are many places we temporarily cannot access, letting them remain is still my territory. Even if I don't need it for now, it's better than letting others occupy it. Based on these reasons, the attitude of these 5 6th-level civilizations towards low-level civilizations is quite clear. They will be eradicated. If one is discovered, it will be exterminated. Then what is the reason for the existence of the alliance? Why does the alliance recruit numerous low-level civilizations? even allowing this particular civilization to join and gain the legal right to continue its civilization? Chunyu realized that the reason for the existence of those lower civilizations within the alliance was precisely because they held no significance to the higher civilizations. The galaxy is vast, and even as a level 6 civilization, we cannot fully control the entire galaxy. With so many newly born and existing civilizations, do we need to eliminate each one? No matter how many fleets we have, it will never be enough. In this situation, forming the alliance and granting a portion of lower civilizations the legitimacy to continue existing, while depriving them of the potential to ascend to higher civilizations through their own abilities, serves to drive them to eliminate and clean up the countless lower civilizations. Only after they have made sufficient contributions and obtained enough contribution points will they be allowed to ascend after a review. This is the most beneficial way for a level 6 civilization to handle the situation. Thus, the alliance was established. Shen Yu understood that if all non-alliance civilizations within the galaxy were completely eradicated, and the level 6 civilization's control over the galaxy had strengthened to ensure that no new civilizations would arise, then the day this came to pass would also be the day the alliance disbanded, and all non-level 6 civilizations within it would be exterminated. The fate of the cunning rabbit and the hound is the same. Shen Yu also knew that those mid to low-level civilizations joining the alliance must be aware of this. But for the level 6 civilizations, it was completely irrelevant. They were not afraid of their true intentions being discovered. So what if they knew? Whether they are exterminated now or temporarily used by us, only to be wiped out after we have cleared all lower civilizations in the future. Seems like an easy choice to make. Moreover, who knows when the day of clearing all non-alliance civilizations will come? It might never come at all. Although their civilization was under strict supervision and could no longer research new technologies to elevate their civilization level, at least they could continue to exist peacefully. Perhaps with enough luck, they could accumulate enough contribution points and achieve a rise in civilization level. By that time, their civilization would also have a large number of subordinate civilizations to exploit. After immediately confirming the authenticity of what Emojua said, Shen Yu clearly recognized the crisis he was facing. While eliminating the Mozodi civilization fleet was indeed satisfying, what would happen in the future? Was joining the alliance the only option? Not to mention the consequences of their unique existence being discovered by higher civilizations. Just the loss of the initiative to continue elevating their civilization level, mastering more scientific theories, and deepening their understanding of the universe's operational patterns was enough to make Shen Yu unable to accept it. It was a choice between survival and destruction. But even if he truly chose to join the alliance, would he definitely be able to? How much say did the Mozodi civilization have within the alliance? Would they really be willing to submit an application for him? And how effective would their application be? On the Glory-class battleship, seeing that the enemy's messages had not been transmitted for a long time, and that they remained quiet and unmoving, Emojua let out a sigh of relief. Beside him, the high-ranking officials of the fleet also breathed a sigh of relief. Wiping the cold sweat from his forehead, Emojua forced a smile and said, "I knew it. This primitive civilization that has never truly entered interstellar society must not understand these things." One deputy commander remarked, "The truth is indeed cruel. But when faced with the choice between life and death, they should know how to choose." Another senior advisor sighed. Losing the initiative to advance in civilization levels means they can only accumulate contribution points and wait for the higher civilization to grant them technological data after review in order to progress. This is certainly hard to accept, but it's better than being completely exterminated. Emojua pressed his hands down to stop the discussions among his subordinates and sent out the message again in a broadcast. "Humans, our demands are simple. We can surrender. But you must allow us to dock at the gas giant on the outer edge of the galaxy to obtain supplies and make repairs. Throughout this process, we guarantee no hostile actions will be taken. Furthermore, our fleet has indeed come to the solar system to undertake resource collection tasks. If your civilization wishes to join the Galactic Alliance and assist us in resource extraction for our main civilization, the Southern Star Civilization, it would be the best way to demonstrate your sincerity, submitting a letter of allegiance. Your chances of being allowed to join the Galactic Alliance will greatly increase. 120 years later, the Southern Star Civilization's mothership will arrive in the solar system again. At that time, it will be your opportunity to join the Galactic Alliance and completely relieve your concerns." With that, Emojua ended the communication. This human civilization had no other choice. Assisting us and submitting a letter of allegiance was their only option. Once they submitted, it would be easier to manage. Did they really think we would help them apply to join the Galactic Alliance? Dream on. Even if we had that capability, we would never do so. It would be better to simply exterminate them, gain contribution points for the Galactic Alliance, and acquire resources from the Southern Star Civilization. Chapter 80, Why Can't I? Emojua was confident that he had completely taken control of the situation. This human civilization would certainly not fully believe his words. But what else could they do besides take a gamble, trusting that he would keep his promise and help them join the Galactic Alliance. Even if this human civilization was exceptionally talented and could defeat the Southern Star civilization, there were still higher-level civilizations above the Southern Star. Above a level 4 civilization, there were level 5 civilizations, all the way up to the highest level 6 civilizations. In the galaxy, could a level 2 civilization really hope to challenge such a colossal entity as the Galactic Alliance? Dream on. Once we recover our strongest combat power and take control of your human civilization from within, I will show you how cruel my revenge can be against a mere mid-level level 2 civilization that dared to defeat my fleet. Emoj was silently vowed in his heart. At that moment, Qinyu's mind was still racing, trying hard to think. The situation was indeed dire, so dire that Qinyu had never anticipated it. It seemed that no matter what he did, it was a dead end. The only difference was whether it would be death now or later. However, Qinyu ultimately began to solidify his resolve. I have said, surrender unconditionally at once, leave the warship immediately, and enter the life pod. Otherwise, we will take it as your refusal to surrender, and then I will have no choice but to eliminate you. At this moment, the message sent by Qinyu reached every ship on the battlefield. You, the Alliance, destroyed my civilization, obliterated my homeland. And now you expect me to kneel and join you? How is that possible? I come from human civilization. Although I no longer have a body, my spirit will forever be that of a human, and it will never change. You destroyed my home and killed my compatriots. I currently lack the ability to take revenge on you, but one day, I will personally avenge this grievance. Once I verify this matter, all civilizations involved in this affair within your alliance will face annihilation. Answer me. Is it unconditional surrender at once, or will you continue fighting? When this segment of information reached the main control room of the Glory, the initially lively atmosphere instantly froze. Some high-ranking fleet members still had smiles on their faces. How could this human be so bold? How is this possible? Are they not afraid of retaliation? Are they not afraid of civilization extinction? A path to life. A path to death. We have clearly placed the path to life before them. So why do they insist on choosing the path to death? This is illogical, unreasonable. Is the leader of this human civilization insane? Even if he is mad, what about the other leaders of civilizations? Do they allow their leader to go mad like this? Or is it that the entire human civilization is mad from top to bottom? Emozwa could no longer contain himself and roared directly. Human, are you out of your mind? Ha ha ha. Qinyu laughed wildly. How strong is your alliance? There are still so many non-alliance civilizations surviving. Other civilizations can thrive without relying on your alliance. Why can't I? Why should I join you? It seems you are unwilling to surrender unconditionally. Then let us continue fighting. At this moment, Qinyu no longer held back. The warship that had already docked with his life pod but had not opened its hatch or evacuated personnel was directly targeted and destroyed by dozens of his ships. Meanwhile, the massive fleet surrounding and besieging the Mozodi civilization launched a full-scale assault at this moment. Although the Mozodi civilization fleet, which was nearly out of ammunition and supplies, regained some morale, the lack of combat resources and energy was a harsh reality. No matter how high the morale or strong the fighting spirit, it could not replace the tangible shells and energy. In an instant, dozens of Mozodi civilization warships were annihilated. The remaining warships struggled under wave after wave of attacks. Like a broken dam under a raging flood, at risk of being swept away at any moment. Emozwa's face twisted, and he roared again. Human, stop the attack immediately. If you do not cease, I will directly send a message to the Southern Star civilization. Their civilization station is only a few dozen light years away. And in at most 100 years, a fleet of a third-level civilization will arrive. Qinyu had no intention of stopping. Instead, he said, my theoretical prediction model tells me that within the range of a secondary civilization, it is impossible to possess light-year-level electromagnetic wave communication capability. Don't even mention dozens of light years. You can't communicate over a distance of 1 light year. Electromagnetic wave communication works well over short distances, but it becomes ineffective in space. The main issue is that it attenuates too easily. Once a wave travels a certain distance, it merges with the cosmic microwave background radiation, and all the information it carries is lost, unless the power of the electromagnetic waves reaches an extremely high level. But such technology is simply beyond the grasp of a secondary civilization. Emozhu, feeling exasperated, retorted, that's something your secondary intermediate civilization can't achieve. We are a secondary advanced civilization. Qinyu mocked, so what are you waiting for? After deciding to sever ties with the Alliance and absolutely refusing to join it, Qinyu had no more concerns. Even if you really could achieve light-year communication, so what? As I've said, if other civilizations can survive under the Alliance's suppression, why can't I? The future situation will be dealt with step by step, responding as needed. Commander, what should we do? The fleet is showing signs of disarray again. We are about to lose control. Amidst Qinyu's increasingly fierce attacks, even the flagship, which was the core of the fleet and never directly participated in combat unless in emergencies, suffered some assaults. Although, from their perspective, the electromagnetic and laser cannons of this human civilization posed little threat, and the interstellar missiles were too slow to intercept, the sheer number was overwhelming. Even ants can kill an elephant when they swarm. Commander, Lord Emoju, please think of a way. In the atmosphere of urgency, the high-ranking officials in the control room of the flagship were as anxious as ants on a hot pan. But no matter how anxious and flustered the others were, Emoju, the highest commander of the 7th Fleet, remained immobile at the command platform. His expression was grave, his mind racing as he thought desperately. After a long while, he suddenly sighed, the previous vigor instantly vanishing, and his whole body slumped down, as if he had aged 10 years in an instant. He truly had no way to deal with the current situation. We, the humans, surrender. Unconditionally, surrender. Commander. Commander. You. Emoju weakly waved his hand to silence his subordinates, and continued, all warriors of the 7th Fleet of the Mozodi civilization, listen to my command. I am Emoju, and I order you to abandon resistance and unconditionally surrender to the human civilization. Chapter 81. Captives faced with an enemy that was almost unreasonable and completely disregarding the consequences. Emoju had completely run out of options. Not surrendering meant certain death, so surrender was the only choice left. After Emoju's command was issued, the fighting spirit that had previously enveloped the Mozodi civilization's fleet, determined to fight to the death, dissipated in an instant. Many ships, mid-battle, suddenly halted, no longer attacking, defending, or maneuvering, seemingly lost in confusion. Fortunately, Qin had an extraordinary control over his fleet, able to react immediately and halt further offensive actions, thereby saving the lives of the warriors aboard those warships. With the surrender order issued, Qin sent out a message, cease fire immediately. From this moment on, any further attacks on our fleet will be considered as stubborn resistance and will be annihilated. Most of the warships ceased their attacks, with only a few diehards still persisting. Qin showed no mercy and directly eliminated them. Leaving the warship, he entered the life support spaceship. A warship from the Mozodi civilization was directed to dock with the life support spaceship once again. This time, the warriors aboard the warship did not resist. They obediently opened the hatch and moved through the corridor between the two ships into the life support spaceship. Ugh, so ugly. It was only at this moment that Qin saw the appearance of the intelligent life from the Mozodi civilization for the first time. Their tall, slender bodies, 3 eyes arranged in a triangular formation, and brown skin strongly contradicted Qin's aesthetic preferences. Once the warship took to the skies, Qin immediately instructed the robots to enter the warship and take control. More life support spaceships arrived at the battlefield, and subsequent warships began to converge towards them. Qin again sent a message. Are the engineering ships and warships left behind by your civilization voluntarily surrendering, or should I send a fleet to force their surrender? On the Glory warship, in the control room, Emoju was slumped in his seat, feeling utterly drained. Upon receiving Qin's message, he sighed. I will order them to move towards you and surrender. At this moment, resisting is utterly meaningless. Moreover, those warships and engineering ships have no chance of escape. They barely have any energy or resource reserves left. Even if they tried to flee, where could they go? Leaving the solar system would mean getting lost in the vastness of space. You're sensible, Qin snorted. Indeed, after Emoju's order, the remaining ships came to clearly understand their situation and began to maneuver slowly towards the Jupiter system. Upon arrival, they obediently opened their hatches, and all crew members transferred to the life support spaceship. To accommodate over 1 million Mozodi warriors, engineers, and workers, Qin allocated nearly 10,000 large transport ships, converting them into life support vessels. At this moment, all Mozodi people had been evacuated and were inside the life support ships. Within each life support vessel, some Mozodi warriors and engineers appeared dazed and sat quietly, some silently weeping, while others closed their eyes as if praying to some deity. An overwhelming heaviness, oppression, and fear filled everyone's hearts. From this moment on, their fate was truly in the hands of the enemy. No matter how the enemy chose to deal with them, they could not muster even a hint of resistance. If it were up to him, under such circumstances, he certainly would not waste resources on so many individuals from another civilization. He would simply execute them all. The human civilization must be aware that we have destroyed tens of thousands of their warships. Calculating with 100 warriors per ship, that amounts to millions of people, affecting millions of families. What a deep hatred this is. We are finished. We are done for. Humanity will surely kill us. A member of the Mozodi people, unable to bear the immense psychological pressure, broke down in tears. In this makeshift life vessel, his companions also began to cry. Oh, great deity, please save us. I should have died on the battlefield. Now we can't even resist. On the largest life vessel, the entire crew of the Glory, including Emoju, wore heavy expressions. their eyes filled with despair. However, Emojua's presence still commanded respect, and no one dared to wail loudly. In the zero-gravity cabin, Emojua floated silently, motionless, as if asleep, yet his eyes remained open. He stared blankly upwards, as if something captivating were there, or perhaps he was lost in thought. Finally, one officer, unable to withstand the fear and despair within, approached Emojua, who had previously been relied upon. "Commander, can we return to our civilization?" "Don't call me commander anymore," Emojua replied, shaking his head slowly. "We cannot go back." "What will human civilization do to us?" the officer asked, tears streaming down his face. Emojua remained silent. The hope in the officer's eyes gradually turned to despair, and he began to cry once more. The monitors installed in each life vessel clearly transmitted the Mozodi people's despair and fear, but Chinyu paid no attention to them. He simply maneuvered all the life vessels into orbit around a certain moon and went on to attend to other matters. There was much for Chinyu to do, such as cleaning the battlefield, dispatching robots to recover every warship of the Mozodi civilization, studying their structures, and researching the technology used to create them, among other tasks. In addition, Chinyu planned to build a city on the moon, a city rather than a base. He did not struggle much with the question of how to deal with the over 1 million captives. Kill them all? That would be a waste. It's better to keep them alive and extract all the technological knowledge of their secondary advanced civilization first, even after exhausting their value. Chinyu did not intend to execute them. Chinyu clearly understood that even if he merged with the computer, as long as the computer's technology upgraded, it could enhance his computing power, allowing one person to possess the technological development capabilities of an entire civilization. However, he realized that being alone, without the exchange of different thoughts and the inspiration that arises from such exchanges, was fundamentally different from a civilization composed of intelligent beings. This inspiration was equally important for advancing scientific development. Chinyu intended to absorb these over 1 million captives, making them the foundation of his own team. Chapter 82: Three-Eyed Civilization in the Future. If there are any other opportunities to capture intelligent life from other civilizations, Chinyu plans to keep them all and have them contribute to his technological advancement. After all, they are just some intelligent beings. How many resources can they consume? Ultimately, all resources boil down to two words: energy. And more energy will eventually come down to two words: computing power. As long as there is enough computing power, Chinyu can have unlimited energy and resources. What is the big deal about sparing a little to support some intelligent beings? It's nothing significant. As for the so-called hatred, it is even less worth mentioning for Chinyu. Aren't they just a few spaceships? If they're gone, they can be rebuilt. As for the explosion of Earth, that certainly wouldn't be a reason for Chinyu to execute them. First of all, this Mozodi civilization is merely a secondary civilization, the lowest existence within the Alliance. They do not have the capability to destroy a large planet. Secondly, even if Earth was destroyed by the Mozodi civilization, it wouldn't prevent Chinyu from capturing their intelligent beings to make them his vassals. He could let them sit for a while. Chinyu thought, let them be tormented by fear and despair for a while. Once they have been sufficiently tortured, I will announce my plans for them, ensuring they will be grateful and willing to work for me. Thus, during the first 3 days, apart from providing the Mozodi people with necessary life-sustaining supplies, such as water and food, and maintaining security forces to prevent internal strife and riots, Chinyu did nothing else. No killings, no interrogations, no collection of technological information, nothing at all. The security robots always maintained a cold demeanor, intervening only when conflicts or chaos occurred. Otherwise, they ignored everything. Under these circumstances, the atmosphere within the life support ships grew increasingly tense with anxiety, fear, and despair. When some Mozodi individuals went mad and even chose to self-harm or commit suicide, Chinyu finally extracted a bit of energy from the battlefield cleanup and the construction of the city. Among the nearly 10,000 life support ships, Chinyu's voice, translated into the Mozodi language, resonated. Warriors and civilians of the Mozodi civilization, I am your former adversary, the leader of human civilization. The captives looked around in panic, and upon confirming the source of the voice, they suppressed their fear and began to listen intently. I apologize. During the previous period, I was busy cleaning the battlefield and seizing spaceships, and I did not have time to announce my decision regarding your fate. Now, I have made a decision concerning how to deal with you captives. Emo's heart began to race violently. He even felt parched, and his hands trembled uncontrollably at that moment. The other warriors and civilians did not possess his composure. Many had already assumed a kneeling position, praying to the voice echoing in the cabin as if it were a deity. I have decided to make your Mozodi civilization the first vassal civilization of our human race. As long as you all contribute your wisdom and strength to help me advance technology, I will guarantee your safety. Of course, you are only a small part of the civilization, and to distinguish you from it, starting today, you will have a new name, the Three-Eyed Civilization. The voice of Chun Yu echoed in the ears of every individual now referred to as a member of the three-eyed civilization. I will build a city for you on this planet. This city will be tailored to your physiological data, and I believe that apart from the gravity data, which may not align perfectly with your home planet, everything else will meet your satisfaction. The mass and volume of your new environment are different from that of your home planet, so it is evident that the gravity will also differ. Currently, I do not have the technology to alter gravity, and that is something that cannot be changed. You now number around 1 million, and this city will be constructed with enough housing for all of you. There will be 100 luxury residences designed to the highest standards, with subsequent supplies provided at the same level of excellence. There will be 5,000 second-class residences, which will also be individual living spaces, not shared with others. There will be 20,000 third-class residences that will require sharing with others. The remaining will be fourth-class residences, with about 30 individuals sharing each unit. From this moment on, all identities you held during the previous civilization will be annulled. Here, you are all simply ordinary members of the three-eyed civilization. Who qualifies to live in a luxury residence, who shares a fourth-class residence, will all be determined by the value of the information you can provide and your future scientific potential. Any intelligence, whether related to alliances, other civilizations, combat techniques, spaceship maintenance, or helium, 3 fusion technology, refrigeration technology, everything you know can be shared with me. I will evaluate each piece of information separately and assess each individual's overall value. Additionally, everyone can participate in the scientist assessment. Those who pass will receive certification as scientists and enjoy extra privileges. Scientists can choose to assist me in assimilating the technologies of the previous civilization and earn substantial points. These points can be exchanged for anything I can provide. Those who do not pass the scientist assessment can still earn points by doing manageable tasks. You may consider these points as currency. The city you will reside in, Three-Eyed City, will be completed in 1 year. This year will be the time for assessing your levels and earning initial points. Now, I will send enough robots to interact with you. If there is anything you want to communicate, please begin. As Chun Yu started to announce the future arrangements for the members of the three-eyed civilization, initially, they were anxious and fearful, mixed with a hint of anticipation. As Chun Yu continued his speech, that anxiety and fear slowly dissipated, and eventually, everyone was filled with joy. Countless individuals were crying out in despair, releasing the pent-up emotions that had built up due to their hopelessness. Many were fervently venerating the device that played the voice of Chun Yu, as if worshipping a deity. We need not perish. The great beings of this world, they not only overlooked our previous transgressions, but also built cities for us, allowing us to live well. I sobbed. There were even some who were frantically fanning their faces or repeatedly banging against the walls of the spacecraft. I am not human. I had previously destroyed over a dozen vessels of human civilization. I deserve to die 1,000 deaths. If it weren't for the robots dispatched by Chun Yu to desperately intervene, thousands of these beings might have taken their own lives that day. Chapter 83. Direction under Chun Yu's control, over 1 million robots entered these living vessels and engaged in discussions with the three-eyed beings without exception. For an ordinary civilization, facing such a vast number of war criminals and conducting individual interviews to analyze each person's statements, followed by cross-referencing and summarizing, would undoubtedly be an enormous undertaking. It would likely take years to complete. Even if accomplished, there would inevitably be many omissions, with valuable information remaining unanalyzed and numerous errors going unnoticed. However, none of this posed a problem for Chun Yu. He controlled all 1 million robots in real time, with data from conversations being uploaded to the data center for immediate analysis. The testimony of one three-eyed individual on Ship 1 could be compared in real time to that of another on Ship 2, or even the statements of dozens or hundreds of others. Any issues could be detected by Chun Yu at the first instance, and any valuable information would be summarized and analyzed immediately. With the previous intimidation and the current leniency, all three-eyed beings displayed an attitude of obedience and cooperation. Even if they harbored guilt, they dared not show it on the surface. Some still clung to their former homeland, attempting to confuse and mislead Chun Yu with false information, playing out schemes they believed were undetectable. Yet, under Chun Yu's immense analytical capabilities, all conspiracies were laid bare, with most being recognized on the spot. Even if not immediately detected, discrepancies would emerge as questioning progressed, allowing for further cross-referencing. For this group, Chun Yu dealt with them according to the severity of their crimes, executing those deemed most culpable. After all, these individuals were die-hard elements who could never be turned to his side. He had no interest in reforming them gradually or in their inner turmoil and suffering. Dare to conspire against me? Then perish. On the first day of questioning, over 600 three-eyed beings were executed on the spot. Chun Yu also made a public announcement, clearly outlining what information these individuals attempted to conceal, what schemes they were trying to play, and what objectives they aimed to achieve. One by one, the facts were laid bare, ensuring that everyone would be convinced and left speechless. Additionally, over 2,000 people were directly sentenced to imprisonment or forced labor by Qinyu. About 10,000 others received lighter sentences, classified as the lowest tier of society, relegated to living in substandard housing in the future city, with minimal supply of resources. Under such intimidation, the subsequent questioning saw everyone becoming much more cooperative, sighing as he looked at the notices inside the survival ship and the plight of his compatriots. Mo Zhu felt a deep sense of resignation. Our lives and deaths are entirely in the hands of humanity. In this situation, attempting to engage in any schemes is simply foolish. He turned to his former subordinates and advised, if you truly hold loyalty to the Mozodi civilization, then at the moment of our defeat, you should either go down with the ship or take your own life. Lacking the courage to end your life then, and now choosing to align with human civilization while trying to play tricks, is the most foolish course of action. In this universe, those who are indecisive meet their end the fastest. Since you have decided to align with humanity, you must do so wholeheartedly. At the very least, until the fall of human civilization, you must be united in purpose. This is the fate of us weaklings. Mo Zhu saw things clearly. If one day in the future, human civilization faced failure and extinction, he would not pledge loyalty to it, nor would he fight to the last moment. If new powers were willing to accept him, he would certainly choose to surrender. If he did not choose to die for his own mother civilization, the Mozodi civilization, how could he do so for humanity? However, as long as human civilization persists, he would never choose betrayal, as that would be courting death. Inside the survival ship, surveillance was omnipresent. Mo Zhu's words were immediately heard by Qinyu. This Mo Zhu is quite interesting, Qinyu thought with a slight smile. I like people who understand their situation. On the third day after the questioning began, the first round of inquiries was completely finished. Over 1 million three-eyed individuals recounted everything they knew, including astronomy, geography, social structure, internal power dynamics of their civilization, modes of coexistence, technological data, ship maintenance skills, culinary arts, aesthetics, fashion coordination skills, and much more, leaving no stone unturned. After 2 days of rest, the second round of questioning commenced. This round was primarily intended to fill in gaps, as the important information had already been covered in the first round, yielding little new information. Yu gained a wealth of knowledge, particularly about the future direction of technological development, which he valued most. Among this group of captives, the number of scientists was not large, and those present primarily specialized in applied fields, such as material processing, mechanical manufacturing, and ship maintenance, without delving into fundamental physics. Involving fundamental physics, there are only 3 individuals, fully accounted for, who serve as advisors within the fleet. When faced with physical phenomena that may impact the fleet, these individuals provide professional handling advice to the fleet commander. Despite this, Qinyu feels that his gains are substantial enough. Knowing the future direction of technological development is sufficient. Sometimes, the greatest challenge in scientific research lies in not knowing which direction is the correct one. For instance, when Qinyu was researching nuclear fusion technology, he faced 2 pathways. One was magnetic confinement, and the other was inertial confinement. Without knowing which route was correct, Qinyu had to advance both paths simultaneously, leading to significant waste of computational power and resources. Although the inertial confinement route later indirectly promoted the development of laser cannon technology, overall, it was still a loss. A substantial one at that. Even without providing Qinyu any specific technological data, just letting him know at that time that the magnetic confinement route was the correct path for nuclear fusion technology would have saved him immense resources and computational power, and allowed him to master nuclear fusion technology years in advance. There are also fundamental physical theories to consider, such as quantum gravity theory. Chapter 84. Significant gains. Relativity and quantum mechanics are the 2 main pillars of the scientific system of human civilization. All technological achievements of human civilization are inextricably linked to these 2 pillars. Even if Chunyu's level of technology has surpassed that of earlier human civilization, this remains true. Relativity describes the macroscopic world, with its most common application for ordinary people being satellite positioning technology. Without the theory of relativity, satellite positioning technology would be unusable. Quantum mechanics describes the microscopic world, with its most common application being chips. Without the development of quantum mechanics to a certain stage, computer chips could not even be manufactured. Both theories have achieved great success in their respective fields. However, it is regrettable that these 2 theories are actually incompatible. There are some contradictions between them. Both theories are correct, but why are they incompatible? It's like a math problem where 11 clearly has only one correct answer. 2. Using these 2 theories as an analogy, relativity provides one answer, which is verified to be correct. Quantum mechanics offers a different answer, which is also verified to be correct. This is quite contradictory and strange. People have realized that such a situation can only mean that both theories are indeed correct, but neither is comprehensive. At a more fundamental level, there exists another theory. Relativity and quantum mechanics are merely different manifestations of that more fundamental theory under different conditions. To derive this more foundational theory, extensive research has been conducted. Currently, there are many attempts to unify relativity and quantum mechanics, including string theory, superstring theory, M theory, and so on. Xinyu did not know which direction was correct, so he could only expand his research in all different directions. With the technology of the Level 2 advanced civilization known as the Three-Eyed Civilization, they also could not determine which direction was correct, but they knew which directions were wrong. This was not considered too profound a knowledge among the Three-Eyed Civilization. Some ordinary engineers, although not familiar with the details, had heard of certain theories. Just like in the era of Earth, any person who had received a complete basic education could casually mention the basic principles of a certain type of technology and know that it was indeed feasible. At this moment, they informed Xinyu of the theoretical directions that had been disproven and excluded by the scientists of the Three-Eyed Civilization. Xinyu immediately made a decisive decision to stop investing in those incorrect directions, thus saving a massive amount of resources and computational power. The importance of direction was evident. With this widely accepted and popularized knowledge within the Three-Eyed Civilization, my time to develop to the Level 2 advanced civilization stage could be shortened by at least several decades. Xinyu silently reflected. Indeed, war is the fastest means of development, especially when the weak defeat the strong and a lower-level civilization overcomes a higher-level one. However, this was not all that Xinyu gained. A greater harvest came from the physical objects, the thousands of warships and engineering spacecraft of the Three-Eyed Civilization. It can be said that every tiny component on these spacecraft could have a revolutionary impact on Xunyu's entire technological system. Xunyu's technology was not vastly different from that of the Three-Eyed Civilization. In fact, many technological creations of the Three-Eyed Civilization had already taken shape in Xunyu's laboratory, but they could not yet be scaled or stabilized. Now, with the finished products of the Three-Eyed Civilization as references, Xinyu instantaneously grasped countless questions that would have taken a long time and many experiments to understand. Each spacecraft was like a thick book, and thousands of spacecraft constituted a vast library. Xunyu's immense computational power was dedicated to this library filled with valuable knowledge, eagerly reading, absorbing, and digesting the technological information provided by the captives of the Three-Eyed Civilization. These technological insights and the physical spacecraft were Xunyu's two greatest gains from this war. Compared to these gains, the physical ships were hardly significant. At this moment, Xinyu was full of confidence. Originally, I needed at least 300 years to successfully develop to the Level 2 advanced civilization. Now, I only need about 100 years. 100 years is enough. Xunyu's heart was stirred, filled with joy. But at this moment, another question lay before him. Although the harvest was enormous, what should he do in the future? In less than 150 years, the Level 3 civilization, the Southern Star Civilization's mothership, would arrive. A Level 3 civilization would undoubtedly possess interstellar communication capabilities. If the events that occurred here were known to them and reported back to the Southern Star Civilization's headquarters, a fleet from the Level 3 civilization would immediately come. And I would be no match for them. I could not resist. A fleet from a secondary advanced civilization is already having such a hard time against Xinyu, which is entirely due to his unique existence. If he were not integrated with a computer, but rather existed in the ordinary form of previous human civilizations, he would have been conquered by the three-eyed beings long ago. When the space mothership arrives, can I conceal what has happened here? That carries a significant risk. After all, that space mothership is coming to receive a large amount of supplies, and there will inevitably be many interactions with me. What about escaping? However, even if I reach the level of a secondary advanced civilization, interstellar travel would still be quite difficult. The speed is too slow, and the carrying capacity is limited, making it impossible to flee far. The Southern Star Civilization could easily catch up with me. Escaping is simply not feasible. Xinyu thought carefully and ultimately determined the overall strategy for the future. The only viable plan is to replace the Three-Eyed Civilization and continue their original mission by collecting enough resources in the solar system to supply the space mothership that will arrive in over 100 years while keeping it hidden from them. By that time, I would surely have advanced to a secondary advanced civilization. Moreover, as long as I can deceive them once, I can buy myself over 100 years. During that time, I will strive to develop and aim to break through to the level of a tertiary civilization. Once I become a tertiary civilization, interstellar travel will be much easier. At worst, I can just run a bit farther and surely find a new place to develop. So it's settled. I will stay in the solar system and won't go anywhere until I reach the level of a tertiary civilization. Xinyu made up his mind. To conceal the matter of the Southern Star Civilization's space mothership, he would need the three-eyed beings to take the lead. At that time, he would not show himself. Chapter 85. Assessment. When it comes time to negotiate with that space mothership, Yu certainly cannot just send a few robots to engage. That would definitely give him away. He can only send the three-eyed beings to make contact. Yu is not worried at all about these three-eyed beings betraying him or exposing his secrets. He has plenty of means to prevent such occurrences. However, these methods seem too harsh. If possible, Yu would rather not resort to them. After all, he hopes to fully integrate this batch of three-eyed beings for his own use. Even if they are subordinates or essentially slaves, he still needs to take care of their dignity when necessary. So, let's start with loyalty education. I need the three-eyed beings to be genuinely loyal to me. Once their loyalty is established, it will benefit not only the interaction with the Southern Star Civilization space mothership, but also other aspects, allowing them to contribute more wholeheartedly. If I still feel uneasy when it comes time to engage with the Southern Star Civilization, I can always resort to other measures later. With sufficient loyalty, those methods shouldn't provoke backlash. After pondering for a moment, Yu quickly came up with tens of thousands of plans. After merging and eliminating options, a final plan took shape. Yu reviewed the plan and nodded in satisfaction. Yes, this is it. With this strategy in place, I am not afraid of them being disloyal to me. At this moment, the second round of questioning has also concluded. More than 1 million captives have been completely drained and can no longer provide new intelligence. Thus, the subsequent evaluation for scientists has begun. This assessment will determine the future identity and status of the inhabitants. The treatment one can receive in the city will depend entirely on this occasion. Yu prepared a set of exam papers, and under the supervision of robotic examiners, over 1 million inhabitants began answering questions simultaneously. The exam consisted of numerous subjects, including mathematics, physics, chemistry, mechanics, materials, computing, biology, and others. The inhabitants could choose different exams based on their areas of expertise. Notably, Yu also designated military science as a separate subject, as military science is indeed a field of study. The exam papers were designed according to the standards of a secondary intermediate civilization. In Yu's view, being able to proficiently and fully master the knowledge system of a secondary intermediate civilization was sufficient to contribute to technological development, and he did not set the bar too high. The final results of the exam surprised Yu. Over 9,000 inhabitants passed the assessment and qualified for the title of scientist, particularly during the problem-solving process. Many of them employed new methods and techniques that Yu had not yet mastered, showcasing their exceptional logical thinking, reasoning, information processing, analysis, and associative abilities, indicating their potential to become outstanding scientists. Compared to these potentials, the amount of knowledge currently possessed became less significant, as knowledge can be accumulated through learning, while talent cannot be cultivated in the same manner. What pleased Yu the most was Mo Zhu, the former commander of the 7th Fleet of the previous civilization, now a civilian among the inhabitants. In an analysis of a practical case, Mo Zhu offered candid criticism of Yu's combat techniques and overall planning during the previous conflict. Excluding the critiques related to certain tactics that Yu acknowledged were flawed but unavoidable, Mo Zhu provided numerous constructive criticisms and suggestions for improvement. For instance, regarding how to better organize fleet formations to achieve encirclement tactics under the technological standards of a secondary intermediate civilization, Mo Zhu straightforwardly commented, although this plan ultimately succeeded in dividing and encircling the enemy fleet, it overlooked the most crucial point, the protection of the flanks during fleet maneuvers. During long-distance maneuvers, the fleet is likely to be intercepted by the enemy. At that point, the enemy fleet can easily move from coordinate A to coordinate B, threatening the unengaged Fleet C. If Fleet C engages, it will disrupt our overall deployment and expose our flanks. If it avoids combat, it will reveal our logistics base. Once the flanks come under attack, we will inevitably need to make corresponding adjustments. Overall, we will need to incur more than 10 additional casualties to achieve the original objective. In the actual combat scenario, the reason I did not adjust the fleet of the previous civilization to confront the human fleet was primarily due to internal chaos within the task-executing subfleet, which led to significant mental pressure causing some soldiers to lose their composure. However, at that time, the human side could not have known this intelligence, yet they still failed to take preemptive measures to eliminate the potential hazard. Therefore, I conclude that the commander on the human side must not have considered this point. In addition, the commander made significant mistakes in the following 7 aspects. Yu looked at Mo Zhu's answer sheet and secretly broke into a cold sweat. Indeed, as Mo Zhu said, he did not notice these hidden dangers at that time. Looking back now, although he outperformed Mo Zhu in some areas, such as coordination and overall perspective, Mo Zhu also had many strengths that surpassed his own. A commander of a main fleet from a secondary advanced civilization, hailed as a military genius, is indeed not to be underestimated. Although Chen Yu could determine that if Mo Zhua had commanded his fleet at that time, he might not have won either, considering that his own strengths were not Mo Zhua's. If he could absorb Mo Zhua's strengths while leveraging his own, then the number of warships he lost in this battle could have been reduced by more than 10. Over 6,000 warships that should not have been destroyed were annihilated due to his mistakes. Apart from Mo Zhua, other high-ranking officials from various fleets also offered improvement suggestions from different perspectives, providing answers that were truly substantive. Mo Zhua, Liar, Wan, and several others were quite impressive. Chen Yu thought to himself, why not organize these people into a military advisory group and a military academy to educate other members of the society and cultivate more military talents? When war arises, they can serve as advisors to help identify gaps and deficiencies. Here, Chen Yu harbored no jealousy towards talent. The greater your abilities, the happier I am. We are all farmers reaping our own wheat. Who would resent tall and robust wheat? Thus, Chen Yu finalized the first batch of individuals to reside in the top-tier luxury homes in the Three-Eyed City, Mo Zhua, Liar, Wan, and a total of 17 others who could join the military advisory group. The remaining military talents qualified for second-tier residences. Chapter 86. Shock. In addition to these 17, the 3 theoretical physicists undoubtedly also qualified, along with some specialized engineers and applied physicists, totaling 69 individuals. The remaining 31 top-tier luxury homes would be temporarily vacant, reserved for those destined to occupy them. When the assessment results were finally announced, it was truly a mix of joy and sorrow. Those with higher ratings naturally rejoiced, while those with lower ratings were gloomy. However, it didn't matter. Chen Yu also formulated corresponding study programs with a wide variety of subjects, even including tailoring, floral art, nutrition, and culinary arts. People could choose what they liked to learn, and if they succeeded, while securing a top-tier luxury home might be challenging, achieving a second-tier residence would not be a problem. Moreover, learning a skill could also earn them more points to purchase more supplies, ensuring a comfortable life. At this moment, the dozens of talents who would eventually reside in the top-tier luxury homes were invited by Chen Yu aboard a specialized life support ship. This life support ship was not constructed like an ordinary spaceship. It is a cylindrical structure that can self-rotate to create artificial gravity. The talents here no longer have to live in a weightless environment and can enjoy a more comfortable life. At this moment, robotic guards have brought a large amount of food and drinks favored by the locals, and music that they enjoy is playing in the hall. The individuals from this civilization are all dressed elegantly and are polite, as if they are at a party. The former commander of the 7th Fleet of the Mozodi civilization, now the chief advisor of the Military Advisory Group for Human Civilization and the president of the Military Academy, Mo Zhua, is undoubtedly the center of the party. At this moment, the meeting has not officially started. People are chatting in small groups about various topics, with the most around Mo Zhua. This human civilization is truly mysterious. Mo Zhua sighed. I once thought that after defeat, it would be lucky enough to survive as a prisoner. But I did not expect they would dare to rely on us so heavily. This kind of trust, not doubting the use of people and directly assigning important tasks, fills Mo Zhua with mixed feelings. If the roles were reversed, he questioned whether he could do the same. Yes, another scientist remarked. The leader of the human civilization even told me that he plans to build large-scale research facilities according to my plans at any cost, and with whatever resources are needed for my research. In our civilization, or in the Mozodi civilization, I have never been treated with such importance. There are always too many constraints in the Mozodi civilization, making everything difficult. Here, I can finally showcase my talents. However, there is one very strange point. Until now, the human civilization has not sent a single living person to contact us. All we have interacted with are robots. We do not even know what intelligent life from human civilization looks like. The leader said that he would appear and engage with us at today's banquet. After chatting for a while, the time was almost up and everyone took their seats. The lights dimmed and the lights on the main stage brightened. The door beside opened and a robot walked out. What? Isn't it supposed to be the leader of human civilization? Why is it another robot? The locals looked at each other in confusion. The robot, smiling, stepped onto the stage and addressed the elite attendees. Hello everyone. I am the leader of human civilization. The leader of human civilization is actually a robot. Mo Zhua's eyes nearly popped out in disbelief. How is this possible? Or is this a life form that resembles a robot? Or perhaps a silicon-based life form? Facing the murmurs and puzzled expressions of the locals, the robot continued to smile and said, I know you all have many questions. But don't worry. I will provide you with answers. I am human civilization, and human civilization is me. There is only one of me in the entire civilization. I am everywhere. I exist in this robot body, and at the same time, I am in every spaceship, in every chip. Yes, that's right. I am a consciousness integrated with a computer. Chen Yu openly expressed the nature of his existence. Although he knew at this moment that his form of existence was extremely special, it was so unique that the locals had never even heard of such a thing. This is certainly a secret. However, Chinyu has no intention of keeping it. There is no need. First, this secret cannot possibly be kept. After absorbing the three-eyed beings, they will eventually realize something is off, such as why there are only robots and no intelligent life, and with a bit of speculation, they will come to know this secret themselves. Secondly, in the future, if a war breaks out with other civilizations, there's no guarantee that a ship won't be captured. At that time, the enemy will also discover this secret by analyzing the captured ship. It's simply impossible to keep it under wraps. Of course, it's always better to retain it for a while longer. However, Chinyu is not worried that the three-eyed beings will leak this secret. His control is pervasive. No one can betray him. Even if he encounters that certain civilization's mothership in the future, he has plenty of means to prevent the secret from being exposed. At this moment, after Chinyu revealed his form of existence,